Chapter 4469. However, Fairy Xing Yu's subsequent words immediately enlightened Su Ji. Humph, don't think I don't know what he's thinking. Fairy Xing Yu snorted coldly. Didn't he support the monster clan to establish the continuous merchant union to compete with Xing Yu? I'd like to see how his continuous merchant union can develop to the same scale as my star moon. Then, Fairy Xing Yu looked at Su Ji and said, could it be, you know that his continuous merchant union is just a child's play? At this point, you're encouraging him to pick the peaches? Forget it. Su Ji waved his hand and said, just pretend I didn't say anything. Then, Su Ji looked at Xiao Hua and asked, by the way, why did that rainbow seashell make things difficult for you? She doesn't seem to be a monster clan member of the Thousand Monsters Sacred Realm, right? She's very powerful. Even I don't want to provoke her. How did you get out of trouble? This. Xiao Hua habitually touched his nose before lying and was about to speak. Fairy Xing Yu saw it at a glance and shouted, he's going to lie again. When you met me earlier, you told me a lot about Bai Xing Yu, but in the end, you still lied a lot. Elder sister. When did I lie to you? Xiao Hua had to remove his hand from his nose and said, if I say some things in front of you, wouldn't I be showing off? Besides, there's nothing to say when dealing with a few monster kings. My fortune gate is far inferior to Xing Yu's, so I don't dare to say more. Humph, that's more like it. Fairy Xing Yu snorted coldly and didn't seem to be angry anymore. She shouted, tell me, how did you get rid of that female seashell? I met her back then. Her seashell was too strong, so I didn't have a good way to get rid of it. Actually, it's nothing. Since Xiao Hua had already decided to lie, he had already picked up the brush in his mouth and said with a smile, I have some connections with this rainbow seashell called Bai Xian. Didn't I tell you earlier? Junior wasn't born in the 3 continents, but in the Dawn Rain continent. Junior's sect is called Shang Huaming. Then, Xiao Hua briefly described the battle between him and Bai Xian. He didn't talk about the divine punishment, he talked a lot about the feelings of kinship. In the end, he even embellished the matter between Little White Dragon and Biyao, making Bai Xian look like an old woman looking for a relative. When she found Xiao Hua, the disciple of her deceased relative, she was moved by Xiao Hua's righteousness and was even more shocked by the love between Biyao and Little White Dragon. She pardoned Xiao Hua's crime of killing Bai Qing Yu's hundreds of thousands of demons and even bestowed Bai Qing Yu to Xiao Hua as a thank you gift for finding the 7-colored conch. Then, she took Little White Dragon and Biyao away and wanted to nurture them well. After Xiao Hua finished telling the happy ending, he took a spirit fruit and put it in his mouth. In the end, Bai Xian took the 2 descendants who had a lot to do with her and returned to her cave residence to live a happy life. Is that all? After listening to Xiao Hua, who looked at her innocently, Fairy Xing Yu was stunned. She asked curiously, You didn't do anything. She let you go? Yes. Xiao Hua was also a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. He nodded and said, I've always convinced people with reason. Besides, I even brought her brother here. What else could she do? Yes, that's true. If it weren't for you, Bai Xian definitely wouldn't have been able to see her brother. Su Ji didn't know if he really believed it or if he was faking it. He nodded and praised, she should be thanking you. She was the one who caused all of this, so it's a happy ending for all of us to be happy. Xiao Hua smiled. He didn't believe that Bai Xian's big 7-colored halo shell world would be known by others. He also didn't believe that Bai Xian would tell others what happened inside. Moreover, Su Ji and Fairy Xing Yu obviously wouldn't have the chance to see Bai Xian again. He wasn't worried about being exposed at all. I don't believe that things will end so simply. Fairy Xing Yu shook her head and said, that 7-colored seashell isn't an easy person to get along with. You killed so many demons. How could she let you go so easily? That's impossible. Upon hearing Fairy Xing Yu's words, Xiao Hua understood. Although Fairy Xing Yu was meticulous, she was not from the royal family and did not know the dangers of the royal family. Therefore, it was impossible for her to consider things from Bei Xian's point of view and think of the reason why Bei Xian had taken action. Therefore, Xiaohua smiled and said, if they continue to fight, both sides will suffer. And Fairy Xingyue, do you think she will care about those juniors who are separated by who knows how many generations? Instead of offending a human clan Mahayana realm expert, it's better to take advantage of the situation and turn a bad thing into a good thing. After all these twists and turns were caused by her own actions, right? Su Ji ignored them and frowned. Xingyue, where is this so-called Red Sea domain? Why don't I have any impression of it? Fairy Xingyue glared at Xiaohua. She knew that Xiaohua wouldn't say much, but she couldn't find any clues. Fairy Xingyue said to Su Ji, Bei Xian is from the Sea clan. Her so-called Red Sea domain should be in the demon realm. How could you know? Even I. This is the first time I've heard of it. Why is the 3 continents so chaotic? Su Ji smiled bitterly. I always thought that this Bei Xian was from the demon realm, but I didn't expect her to be from another high-level world like us. From what Xiaohua said, I can't tell whether this Red Sea domain is from the upper realm or not. Fairy Xingyue shook her head slightly. However, from Bei Xian's strength, the Red Sea domain is not much different from the demon realm. I'll check it carefully when I return to the Palace of Justice. Seniors. Xiaohua smiled and said, this junior will go for a walk and see my old friends. Seniors, let's discuss the matter of returning to the immortal realm. Go ahead. Su Ji nodded. However, just as Xiaohua walked out of the hall, Fairy Xingyue's voice sounded again. Xiaohua, don't seduce the star-picking house master of Xingyue. Xiaohua staggered and turned around helplessly. Elder sister, your Xingyue is not the Yihong brothel. Do you think this junior is interested in seducing them? Hee. Fairy Xingyue covered her mouth and laughed. She secretly glanced at Su Ji. Fortunately, Su Ji seemed to be thinking about something and frowned. He did not pay attention to what Fairy Xingyue said. The outside of the hall was empty, with only bare stone walls. There was no one around, and there was no exit. Xiaohua released his divine sense, scanned the area, and walked towards a certain direction. Sure enough, when Xiaohua arrived in front of the stone wall, a ripple appeared on the stone wall, and a moon gate appeared. Xiaohua floated past the moon gate, and a ripple swept across the jade pendant in front of his chest. Outside the moon gate was the pavilion that Xiaohua had seen outside the star-picking house. Layers of beautiful halos slowly flowed between the pavilions, and an unconcealable coldness emanated from the halos. This coldness not only spread outside the star-picking house, but also seeped into the bottom of the star-picking house. Restrictions that looked similar to defensive formations were born in this coldness. Xiaohua walked to the edge of the pavilion and looked outside the star-picking house. In just a moment, it was already snowing outside. The snowflakes were beautiful, and when the brilliance of the star-picking house fell on them, they reflected a variety of colors. Xiaohua felt a sense of contentment even without the company of a beautiful woman. Of course, this feeling of contentment only lasted for a moment. Xiaohua lifted his gaze and looked towards the horizon covered by dark clouds. He said in a low voice, "Mother, has there ever been snow in Guizhuang?" Naturally, no one answered Xiaohua's whisper. He looked for a moment and turned his head again. There was a flight of stairs in front of him that led to the next floor. Xiaohua thought for a moment and walked over. However, just as he walked down the stairs, he saw Zhu Qing standing there respectfully, holding something that looked like a book. Fellow Taoist Zhu. Seeing Zhu Qing standing there, Xiaohua hurried over and said with a smile, "It's really been a long time." Senior. How could Zhu Qing dare to let Xiaohua call him fellow Taoist? He hurriedly replied, "It's enough for you to call this junior Zhu Qing. This junior doesn't dare to talk to senior as an equal." There's no need to be like this. Xiaohua said with a smile, we are old friends, and we had a good chat in the Bronze Pillar country. You don't care about this? Senior is wrong. Etiquette is the foundation of why our human race is stronger than the demon race. If this junior doesn't respect etiquette, law, and etiquette, how is this different from the demon race? I remember that this junior also said at the star-picking house in the Bronze Pillar country that Taoism pursues the heavenly Tao and wants to roam the firmament with their own bodies. Confucian cultivators also pursue the heavenly Tao. However, Confucian cultivators believe that the heavenly Tao is the human path. Experiencing the world of mortals will naturally temper the heavenly Tao in their hearts. The heavenly Tao is either Tao, or law, or reason. If this junior can't even abide by this etiquette, how can this junior comprehend the will of the heavens and the hearts of the people? Xiao Hua was a bit embarrassed. He nodded and said, that's right, that's right. You said this on the ferry under the Rainbow Bridge that day. This Xiao still remembers it. It's good that Senior remembers it. Zhu Qing had a respectful smile on his face. He handed over the book in his hand and said, this junior remembers that Senior once said that you wanted to finish writing the Book of Heroes in the star-picking house. This junior held Senior's words in high esteem that day. This junior also believed that Senior could realize that dream. However, what this junior didn't expect was that in just 200 years, Senior had already risen from the biographies to this era. Although Senior's deeds aren't enough to finish writing the entire this era, this junior knows that it won't be long before Senior will have his own Book of Heroes. In the face of Zhu Qing's respect, Xiao Hua's interest was somewhat dampened. However, after some thought, he understood Zhu Qing's difficulties. Zhu Qing was only a Confucian cultivator at the beginning of the 5th grade of Essence Force. He was a human Mahayana cultivator. Even the palace master of the Star Moon Palace treated him as an equal. How could Zhu Qing, the tower master of the star-picking house, dare to address him as a brother? Of course, Zhu Qing wasn't that kind of person. Of course, he wouldn't do anything that crossed the line. Why should he make things difficult for him? Thus, Xiao Hua smiled and took the book. He said, Zhu Qing, back then you told this old man that the Book of Heroes in the star-picking house isn't a book. Why is this book fooling this old man today? Chapter 4470. Hearing Xiao Hua refer to himself as an old man, Zhu Qing immediately relaxed. He smiled and said, Senior will know when you take a look. Yes. As Xiao Hua spoke, his gaze landed on the book. He saw that the book was rough to the touch, similar to an ordinary book. There were even layers of paper-like imprints on the side of the book. But when he actually flipped it open, Xiao Hua discovered that the book was completely made of jade. Senior, use the eye-clearing technique. Minister Zhu immediately reminded as Xiao Hua flipped through the book. All right. As Xiao Hua spoke, a faint green light appeared in his eyes. Under the light of his clear eyes, the jade began to glow. A book with a golden base and jade words appeared. And on the cover of this book, there were 2 lines of big words, which were respectively, Hero Book, Xiao Hua's Chronicle. This era? Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily. This old man remembers that this record is the emperor's biography. Because the emperor is the highest leader who manages the country's affairs, he wrote a record for them and called it this record. It's precisely because this record shows where the world's origin lies, so that the officials and the people all have a certain degree of discipline in their actions. On the other hand, aristocratic families recorded the affairs of the vassal kingdoms. This was because the vassals established the Qing family, and their descendants were hereditary. Thus, their biographies were called aristocratic families. Biographies recorded all kinds of historical figures other than emperors and dukes. At best, this old man can be considered a biography. How did I become a chronicle? Senior, you don't know. Zhu Qing said respectfully, Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes is different from that of ordinary Confucian cultivators. The emperors and generals of the secular world are not included in the Book of Heroes. If their cultivation was profound and they had made great contributions to the hidden immortal continent, they might be listed in the biographies. The epoch in the Book of Heroes of Zhai Xing Lu is specially prepared for the supreme cultivators of the hidden immortal continent. For example, the Chronicles of Immortal Emperor Go Chen, Vairocana Rolai, Golden-Winged Peng Grand Sage, and Octagonal Pentaceratops Grand Sage. Each of these chronicles recorded the achievements of immortal emperors, Vairocana Rolai World Sovereign, and Golden-Winged Peng Grand Sage. Aside from the chronology, the noble clans of Zhai Xing Lu are also different from the noble clans of ordinary Confucian cultivators. They record the noble clans of the 100 schools of thought, such as the Dongfang noble clan, the Shimen noble clan, the Nangong noble clan, the Dark North noble clan, etc. It records the history and deeds of these noble clans. The so-called biographies recorded the deeds of other cultivators besides the current era and the aristocratic families. There were many records in this biographies. There were Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, Taoist sects, and demons. It was the true Book of Heroes of Zhai Xing Lu. Senior was previously listed in the biographies, which should be the biographies of Xiao Hua. However, just a few days ago, Senior shocked the Thousand Demons sacred realm, and your name spread far and wide. The Book of Heroes that recorded Senior's deeds was also changed to the Chronicles of Xiao Hua. This junior was fortunate enough to be the first person to create a biography for Senior. This Chronicles of Xiao Hua was also personally created by this junior. Thank you, thank you. Xiao Hua looks at the respectful Zhu Qing and says with emotion, I didn't think that the joke this old man made that day would actually come true today. Thank you for your hard work. I don't dare. It is this junior's honor to be able to write this Chronicles for Senior. The pride on Zhu Qing's face doesn't seem to be fake, and he answers very happily. Xiao Hua slightly nods and looks at the big words on the jade. However, the Chronicles of Xiao Hua still has 4 words, and he doesn't see what's inside. Xiao Hua asks curiously, Zhu Qing, how do you see what's inside? Senior. Zhu Qing says with a smile, Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes records the deeds of various heroes. Some are secret, and without a certain level of authority, you can't see them. This junior can only see a part of Senior's chronicles. Didn't Palace Lord give Senior a jade pendant? Senior can just put the jade pendant on the Book of Heroes. Okay. Xiao Hua responds and puts the jade pendant on the Book of Heroes. Indeed, starlight appears on the jade pendant. In the starlight, the Book of Heroes starts to move by itself, page by page. Since it's his own chronicles, Xiao Hua originally wanted to read 10 lines at a glance. However, just as he reads the first page, he sees the first sentence, Xiao Hua of Dao Sect, origin unknown, first appeared in Yu Province's Longevity Town, only 3rd grade of elemental force. And next to this sentence is another line of small words, suspicious, origin of other realm, name of realm unknown, hiss. Xiao Hua inhales a breath of cold air and hurriedly continues to flip. Sure enough, at the place where Ci Hang appeared, there are 2 lines of small words, suspicious. This Ci Hang might be Xiao Hua in disguise, because the timing of Xiao Hua's coma is really too coincidental. However, Xiao Hua has never revealed his Buddhist cultivation, so it's impossible to confirm. Suspicious. There is a Ci Hang in Single Yang country, the name and appearance are all the same, but that day, Ci Hang didn't leave Single Yang country, so Ci Hang might have escaped detection. His granny. Xiao Hua's expression changed slightly. He raised his head and looked at Zhu Qing. Zhu Qing didn't show any surprise and said with a smile, Senior, this junior can only see a few places, but this junior knows. There might be many places that Senior can't think of. People often say, if you don't want others to know, don't do it in the first place. Many times, things that we think are undetectable are actually not hidden at all. That's right. Xiao Hua also shook his head and continued to read. The more he read, the more shocked he became. There were actually many secrets that he didn't want others to know. But fortunately, Xiaohua didn't care about the secrets recorded in the Book of Heroes. When Xiaohua flipped to the last page, he saw the record: Fortune Gate's 200,000 disciples massacred by Qingyu, then led the troops to heaven-concealing ridge and ancient Bell Mountain. In this battle, the Fortune Gate ascended the battle stage of the three mainland struggle for hegemony. Xiaohua is qualified to be listed in this chronicles. Behind this was another line of slightly lighter handwriting: suspicious. These 200,000 disciples are Xiaohua's iron army in the Kunlun immortal realm. Fortunately. Xiaohua saw this and let out a long sigh. This Zhao's biggest secret has yet to be revealed. Moreover, the secret of these clones has yet to be discovered. Granny, this star moon is too powerful. If this Xiao can obtain it in his hands. Of course, this thought flashed through Xiaohua's mind. Since Fairy Xingyu had already warned Xiaohua not to covet it, Xiaohua definitely wouldn't go and provoke a true fairy from the immortal realm. Xiaohua closed the chronicles of Xiaohua in his hand and asked with a smile, "Zhu Qing, is there any other book of heroes in this star-plucking tower?" Reporting to Senior. Zhu Qing carefully received the Book of Heroes and respectfully said, "All of Star Moon's books of heroes are placed in the moon-embracing palace. Normally, only a few copies are placed in various star-plucking towers. Because Senior recently appeared in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, Senior's Book of Heroes was sent to the star-plucking tower here. Of course, the star-plucking tower in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm has been closed recently, and the other star-plucking tower's books of heroes were also sent here. However, these books of heroes are mostly chronicles and biographies of the demons. If Senior is interested, you can head to the Hall of Heroes to take a look." Moon-embracing palace? Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, "What kind of place is the moon-embracing palace?" "Senior, please no." Zhu Qing answered, "The reason why Star Moon is called Star Moon is because the star refers to the star-plucking tower, and the moon refers to the moon-embracing palace. I'm sure Senior already knows what the star-plucking tower is. The moon-embracing palace is the palace where the palace lord resides. As for where the moon-embracing palace is, I don't know either." "Oh, I see." Xiaohua smiled. Fairy Xingyu had told him so much, but she had never mentioned the moon-embracing palace. Of course, she was wary of him. He asked again, "The Hall of Heroes is in the star-plucking tower, right?" "Yes." Zhu Qing nodded. "Good." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Zhu Qing, if you have the time, can you bring me to the Hall of Heroes?" "Of course." Zhu Qing was very happy. "I'm just about to return the Book of Heroes to the Hall of Heroes." "Senior, please." The Hall of Heroes was on the floor where Zhu Qing was respectfully standing. In just a moment, Zhu Qing brought Xiaohua to the Hall of Heroes. This was an extremely majestic-looking pavilion. Before they even reached the front, a murderous aura mixed with an overwhelming will hit them in the face. A kind of loneliness and desolation of being suddenly on the battlefield involuntarily arose. In the eyes, a bloody light rushed out from the pavilion. Bursts of war drums and the neighing of thousands of horses also surged in the surroundings like a hidden fragrance. Xiaohua had been on the battlefield, so he was no stranger to this murderous aura that came out of nowhere. Zhu Qing shrunk his neck, as if it was somewhat unbearable. "Zhu Qing." Xiaohua keenly felt the change in Zhu Qing's true qi and said with a smile, "This place doesn't seem to be suitable for you. Give the Book of Heroes to me. I'll help you bring it in." "No need." Zhu Qing shook his head and said, "Returning the Book of Heroes is my duty. I can't let Senior do it for me." As he spoke, true qi surged around Zhu Qing's body. Thumb-sized clouds emerged from the surface of his body, protecting Zhu Qing as he stepped into the door of the pavilion. Clang! The sound of a sword rang out from above the pavilion. A flying sword flew out like a flying immortal from outer space, slashing towards the top of Zhu Qing's head. Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense and immediately sensed Fairy Xingyu's thoughts from the sword intent. He understood that this was the prohibition of the Hall of Heroes. Sure enough, with a soft boom, a faint starlight rushed out from the top of Zhu Qing's head. The flying sword fell on the starlight and instantly turned into nothingness. Zhu Qing's figure disappeared from the pavilion. Xiaohua had a jade pendant in front of his chest, so of course, he wouldn't care about this flying sword. When he stepped into the Hall of Heroes, he couldn't help but be stunned again. However, he saw that the Hall of Heroes was not a library like he had imagined. Instead, it was a space that resembled a starry sky. In the dreamlike night, the figures of the Yao clan adorned the starry sky. Not far from Xiaohua, a lifelike statue of Xiaohua flashed with golden light and stood there with a faint smile. Zhu Qing had placed the Book of Heroes in the hands of this statue. Next to Xiaohua's statue, Fengwu's demon body statue spread its wings, as if it was about to soar. Under Fengwu's phoenix claws, there was also a Book of Heroes flashing with golden brilliance. Chapter 4471. Senior. Just as Xiaohua was sizing it up, Zhu Qing put down the Book of Heroes, turned around, and said respectfully, "Junior can't stay in the Hall of Heroes for long. Senior can look around as you please. Junior will wait outside the Hall of Heroes." "Zhu Qing, you don't have to wait." Xiaohua waved his hand and smiled. "I don't know when I'll go out, so you should rest early." "I don't dare." Zhu Qing said respectfully. "Senior doesn't know anyone else in the stargazing tower. Junior can't not wait on you." "All right then." Xiaohua understood that even if he didn't agree, Zhu Qing would still wait outside. He nodded and flew to the phoenix parasol statue. Zhu Qing didn't dare to say anything and floated out of the Hall of Heroes. Xiaohua was the only one left in the entire starry sky. Xiaohua picked up the Book of Heroes on the phoenix parasol statue's claws. When he saw the cover, it was titled Heaven-Defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage. He took a deep breath and opened it. When he saw what was written on it, he couldn't help but laugh. There was only one line written on it: Heaven-Defying Thunder Phoenix Great Sage. Origin unknown. 7 stars Great Sage. When he entered the Great Sage Hall, 10,000 stars greeted him. He guided 10,000 stars into the sun and bestowed the 1,000 demons with the power of 10,000 stars. He was supported by 10,000 demons. And the line next to it wrote, Suspected, Phoenix Clan Descendant. Born in the 10,000 demon realm. Not bad, not bad. This is the true heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix. Xiaohua smiled and put the Book of Heroes back on the phoenix parasol statue's claws. He looked around again. Beside the phoenix parasol statue, there were naturally statues of the other 6 saints of the Great Sage Hall. However, these statues didn't have the Book of Heroes. Damn it, so Fairy Xingyu is also afraid of the Great Sage Hall coming to cause trouble. She doesn't dare to put the Great Sage Hall's Book of Heroes here. Xiaohua curled his lips and cursed silently. Since she doesn't dare to put it here, why put these statues here? Xiaohua was naturally most concerned about the secrets of the Great Sage Hall's Great Sage Hall. Without these secrets, Xiaohua had lost interest in the hall. However, he still looked around and casually found some books of heroes to check. There were quite a few heroes' albums in the Hall of Heroes. Even though Xiaohua was aimless, he still looked at them for an hour. Seeing that there were more and more trivial matters in the heroes' albums, Xiaohua clapped his hands and prepared to leave. At this moment, he saw a statue of a demonic beast that was even larger than the golden-winged rock. He flew over and raised his hand to take out a palm-sized book of heroes from the mouth of the monster statue. Written on the book were the biographies of Qijing, Yuan Feng, Bing Qin, and Qi Hua. Xiaohua understood that this was a compilation of the biographies of several demonic beast experts. When he opened the biographies and skimmed through them, he couldn't help but frown when he reached the end. At the end, it said, Qijing, Yuan Feng, and Bing Qin, the 3 demonic realms, all the demonic beasts were killed overnight. Qijing became an abyss, Yuan Feng became a wasteland, and Bingqin became a barren ridge. There were no bloodstains, no corpses, and no traces. Everything turned into nothingness. The biographies of Qijing, Yuanfeng, and Bingqin came to an end. Of course, there was a small line of words next to the end. Hiss. Xiaohua took a deep breath and thought of what Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji had said when he left the top floor of Zhai Xinglu. He hurriedly looked in another direction, where the hero's album of the Buddhist sect was recorded. However, the Buddhist sect was different from the 1,000 demonic sacred realm. They were temples of different styles. Xiaohua couldn't find the 5 temples that Fairy Xingyu didn't mention. However, when Xiaohua looked at the shining Qijing statue, he had some understanding in his heart. His divine sense swept through the temple, and he also found 5 temples with dark colors. Xiaohua flew to one of the temples and saw a hero's album in front of the mountain gate of the temple. On it was written, Aristocratic Family of Qingzhou Temple. Qingzhou Temple is Qingzhou Temple. It's really weird to make it an aristocratic family. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the Mahavairakana revered Buddha knew about this, wouldn't he be mad? Oh, there's no need to look at this aristocratic family of Qingzhou Temple. Just looking at Mahavairakana revered Buddha will make him go crazy. Immediately Xiaohua opened this book of aristocratic families to take a look. He saw that on the first page of the Book of Heroes, it was recorded, Qingzhou Temple was built in. It was built in the 73rd year of the calendar by begging alms from the school of law Qingzhou Luohan. The following pages of the Book of Heroes recorded the many good deeds and evil deeds of Qingzhou Temple in full detail. Next to every paragraph there was also a comment of doubt. And at the end, just like what Xiaohua saw earlier, it said, Qingzhou Temple had 1 protector heavenly king, 3 venerable masters, 4,213 Buddha sons, and more than 7,610,000 ordinary people within 100,360 li radius. In one night they all disappeared without a sound of warning, without a single scream, without a single drop of blood left behind, and without a single piece of bone left behind. The Buddhist formations, Buddhist weapons, pagodas, and other things in Qingzhou Temple also disappeared without a trace. The remark on the other side was also suspicious. How strange. Xiaohua's heart tightened when he saw the disappearance of 7 million people. He took a closer look and still couldn't find any clues. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Then, Xiaohua looked at the records of the other 4 temples. They were more or less the same as Qingzhou Temple. He couldn't find any clues at all. Xiaohua placed the hero's album he had read in front of the mountain gate. He had a slight understanding in his heart. He pondered and said, I'm thinking too much. There are countless humans and demons in this world. Countless things happen at every moment. Who knows how much karma is involved in these things? If I want to understand all these things in karma, even if I have the exquisite 7 orifices heart, I won't be able to do it. Just like when I went to Bai Qingyu. I first met that great demon on the snowy mountain. If I'm not wrong, that great demon is related to Bai Qingyu's demon king, Bai Qing. I learned from that great demon that Bai Qingyu covets me. Then, I went to the southern sea dragon palace and learned from the dragon kings of the 4 seas that the little white dragon might be suppressed. Then, I met Shui Mingzi and the others. Only then did I know Bai Qingyu's exact location and why they wanted to save me, as well as their respective plans. Of course, at the same time, Zhai Xingzi, Xiong Yi, Yingpe, and the others were also preparing to save me. Bai Qingyu, Gu Zhongshan, and Canopy Ridge were also scheming against me. Everything was happening, and I was only trapped in a corner. I didn't know about the schemes and sacrifices. Only when I went to Bai Qingyu and saw Qingbu's banquet did I understand the whole story. However, the whole story was still a show. Only when Bai Xian made a move did I see the real mastermind behind the scenes. And the mastermind's motive is bitter and pitiful. That's right, Jiu Xia is right. Everything in the world that is complicated and enigmatic is indeed a beautiful scenery, but this scenery is nothing but nothingness. Only the source and the truth behind the complicated and enigmatic things are eternal beauty. Xiao Hua instantly thought of that world-toppling beauty again. That face was truly refined. It was the first time Xiao Hua had seen such a face in his life. Unless I can break away from these karma and jump out of the 5 elements, I'll be able to see the truth of the world. Xiao Hua instantly had another realization. Cryptic waves flashed around his body. He was delighted and didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly sat cross-legged in the Hall of Heroes. That cryptic wave emitted from his body and landed on every book of heroes. Every time it passed by a book of heroes, thousands of inscriptions would fly out from the book of heroes and swarm into the wave. Furthermore, every inscription would turn into a stroke and disappear. Looking at Xiao Hua's figure again, it was also swaying like light and shadow as the inscriptions entered. Every time it swayed, his figure would change a little. When the wave enveloped the entire Hall of Heroes, Xiao Hua's figure had already turned into a karma hand. Swoosh! The wave immediately reverberated and it touched the stone wall of the Hall of Heroes. The karma hand formed by Xiao Hua produced thousands of thin threads and fell into the thousands of sculptures one by one. The strokes that had previously fallen into the wave turned into a trickle and flowed into the karma hand along with the karma threads. In just a few breaths, the reverberating wave collided with the karma hand again. The wave was like a surging wave. Strange scenes of light and shadow flashed in this wave. At the same time, the wave spread out in all directions with the karma hand as the center. It rushed through the restriction of the Hall of Heroes and fell into the entire Zhai Xing Lu. On the top floor of Zhai Xing Lu, Fairy Xing Yu and Su Ji seemed to be talking about something. The water-blue thunder mark between Su Ji's eyebrows suddenly flashed. Su Ji was shocked. Just as he was about to get up, the wave of the karma wave had already wrapped around Su Ji. Su Ji seemed to be imprisoned. Both his figure and expression were frozen in place. It was the same for Fairy Xing Yu, who was opposite Su Ji. Her bare ankles flashed with a pure white luster and were slightly raised. The fluorescence from her toenails that were smeared with starlight also froze in midair. If the 2 immortals were controlled by the wave of karma, how could the other humans in Zhai Xing Lu be spared? The entire Zhai Xing Lu turned into a solidified light and shadow in the river of karma. Both time and space were still. Waves of karma surged out from the karma hand. The threads of karma were born from the thousands of sculptures. Through the records, they surged to various parts of the Thousand Demon sacred realm. It was unknown how long it took. Time was not the only and absolute thing in the river of karma. The area affected by the river of karma was also unknown. However, in the stillness of everything, the thunder mark between Su Ji's eyebrows flashed again. Swoosh! A spear-like object flew out of the thunder mark. As soon as it appeared, an extremely obscure wave fell into the river of karma. Kacha! A crack appeared where the ripple was. The stillness of the Thousand Demons sacred realm in Zhai Xing Lu was shattered. At the same time, the seemingly endless river of karma was also cut off. However, it disappeared in an instant. Chapter 4472. It was only then that Su Ji finished speaking. He stood up abruptly and looked at the Hall of Heroes. Fairy Xing Yu lowered her raised ankle. She looked at Su Ji in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't know." Su Ji's eyes flashed with lightning. He said hesitantly, "I have a strange feeling, as if someone is spying on us." Fairy Xing Yu used her divine thought to check. After a moment, she shook her head and said, "That's impossible. Is there anyone in this world who can escape the detection of our divine ability? My punishment fairy weapon has been activated." Su Ji suddenly touched the thunder mark that had disappeared with his finger and shouted, "There's definitely something unusual." Otherwise, would have known when the punishment fairy weapon was activated. Moreover, what on the 3 continents is worth the punishment fairy weapon activating itself? Su Ji pointed in the direction of the Hall of Heroes and asked, that place, is in that direction? There? Fairy Xingyu was puzzled. Below is the Hall of Heroes. Below that is the Hall of Heroes. Below that is the auction hall. Suji's figure swayed. Quick, the Hall of Heroes, damn it. How could Fairy Xingyu not know what had happened? She said angrily, could it be that the 7-star great saint sneaked into the Hall of Heroes? The two ignored the restriction of the Hall of Heroes, crossed the space, and landed in the Hall of Heroes. Ripples flashed in a space in the Hall of Heroes. Amidst the lightning and starlight, Fairy Xingyu and Suji appeared. When the two of them saw everything in the Hall of Heroes, they were surprised again. Fairy Xingyu shouted, Xiaohua. You! Why are you in the Hall of Heroes? Huh? At this time, Xiaohua had just placed the hero book of the last temple in front of the statue's mountain gate and was about to turn around and leave. Hearing Fairy Xingyu's exclamation, Xiaohua was stunned. He turned around and asked curiously, Seniors, why did you suddenly appear? Is there something important? Are you the only one in the Hall of Heroes? Suji asked hurriedly. Xiaohua nodded and said, yes, it's me. Previously, this junior. Xiaohua was about to explain, but Suji wasn't interested in listening at all. His gaze swept across the entire Hall of Heroes like lightning, and his figure once again flashed with lightning and disappeared. It's fine, it's fine. When Fairy Xingyu saw Suji heading to the assembly hall, she waved her hand at Xiaohua and said, do whatever you want. After saying that, Fairy Xingyu also disappeared. I'm fine with anything. Xiaohua helplessly scratched his head and thought to himself, although there are many Book of Heroes in this Hall of Heroes, it is still limited. The hand of cause and effect that I have comprehended has only been comprehended once in all the Book of Heroes. If you don't mind, then tell this Xiao where the moon-embracing palace is. Xiaohua finished thinking. Just as he was about to take a step forward, he was startled again. Io, not good. I just realized, did I disturb the two immortals? It seemed like a long time had passed. If not 100 years, then at least 1,000 years, right? Xiaohua hurriedly came out from the Hall of Heroes. Sure enough, Minister Zhu was still standing respectfully in the distance. Xiaohua hurriedly asked, Minister Zhu, how long have I been inside the Hall of Heroes? How long? Minister Zhu didn't quite understand, but he still answered honestly, Senior, you have been in the Hall of Heroes for the time it takes to burn an incense stick. Oh, that's good. Xiaohua felt relieved. Just as he was about to speak, Minister Zhu said again, Senior, if you have the time, can you, without waiting for Minister Zhu to finish speaking, his figure paused. It was obvious that he was listening attentively. After a few breaths, Minister Zhu respectfully saluted somewhere and said, this subordinate understands. Then, Minister Zhu saluted Xiaohua again and said, Senior, there are some urgent matters at Jai Xinglu. This junior can't accompany you. Senior can go to the top floor to rest or walk around as you wish. After this junior is done, I will come to find you. Alright, you can go now. Xiaohua was originally excited to chat with Minister Zhu, but seeing Minister Zhu's unusually respectful manner, he was already a little tired. Seeing that he had something to do, he waved his hand and let him go. This junior will take his leave. Minister Zhu still saluted very politely and quickly left. Alas, etiquette is naturally necessary. But if you take etiquette too seriously, then it's meaningless. This Xiao originally wanted to have a good chat with you. Why is this Xiao still interested now? Xiaohua looked at Minister Zhu's back and understood in his heart that he had only met Minister Zhu once. He wasn't even as familiar as Princess Baihua. It was normal for him to be respectful to him. What happened at Jai Xinglu? Xiaohua, the main culprit, didn't have the slightest awareness. He smacked his lips and said, with two immortals here, who dares to be rash? This Xiao had better walk around casually. Perhaps I can find some cheap things. After walking a few steps, Xiaohua stopped again and laughed even more involuntarily. Damn it, with this Zhao's realm, where can I go to pick up cheap things? Even if there are cheap things, this Xiao would be embarrassed to reach out with my cultivation. As he spoke, Xiao Hua's body fluctuated, and his Mahayana cultivation realm slowly fell. It only stabilized when it fell to the upper fourth level of origin power. Xiao Hua sized it up and nodded, saying, "This realm is suitable for this Xiao after 200 years. Anyway, even Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji didn't know what happened to Bai Qingyu. Those human cultivators of Zhai Xinglu probably only cared about entering Star Moon Palace and wouldn't know about Bai Qingyu's matter like those tower lords of Zhai Xinglu, right? Otherwise, this Xiao will have to change his appearance." Xiao Hua finished his preparations and raised his head to look in the direction that Zhu Qing had left. There was a flight of stairs there. Xiao Hua walked over and walked down the stairs. There was no movement on the next few floors. Clearly, these were the pavilions that Zhai Xinglu used for their own purposes. Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry, he just walked down the stairs. After half a cup of tea's time, he saw a faint restriction fluctuation, and a burst of noisy aura came from below the pavilion. Xiao Hua smiled as if he saw a large pile of good quality spirit grasses appear in front of him. However, just as he turned around the stairs and saw the situation in front of him, Xiao Hua was a little disappointed. This was a huge hall that was thousands of feet wide and there were many cultivators clustered inside. These cultivators were either Confucian cultivators or Taoist cultivators. There were even some bald monks. In a large corner of the hall, there were actually more than 10 demons sitting together. However, there were no spiritual herbs and the like that Xiao Hua was hoping to see. Oh. Looks like these cultivators and the Yao clan should be the candidates to head to the Star Moon Palace. Xiao Hua looked at the cultivators with varying levels of strength and understood. Then, he didn't plan to stop and continued walking down. However, at this moment, a slightly excited voice called out, "Xiao! Senior Xiao!" Xiao Hua was taken aback. He raised his head and looked over, only to see that not far away from him, there were a dozen or so scholars in scholarly attire. These scholars were either holding folding fans in their hands or holding wine cups in their hands. They were talking loudly and giving pointers. A Confucian cultivator with a slightly aged face was looking at him. That Confucian cultivator's pair of thick and long eyebrows were very eye-catching. "Mr. Mo Jinli?" Xiao Hua looked at this unfamiliar face and immediately remembered. Wasn't this the Confucian cultivator Mo Jinli that he met in Longevity Town in Country Shi? That day, he and Mo Jinli had fought against the water monsters of Liao River and had a fierce battle with Jiang Sheng of Dong Tian River. He didn't expect to meet him in Thousand Demons' sacred territory star-picking tower hundreds of years later. "Yes, it's me." Seeing that Xiao Hua recognized him, Mo Jinli hurriedly got up and walked quickly to Xiao Hua. He bowed and said, "It's been many years since we parted in Longevity Town. I really didn't expect to meet you in Thousand Demons' sacred territory star-picking tower." Mo Jinli was one of the first Confucian cultivators that Xiao Hua met after coming to hidden Immortal mainland. This Mo Jinli cultivated the noble spirit river and used the righteous qi of heaven and earth to temper his heart. His character and temper were very much to Xiao Hua's liking. It was a pity that after Xiao Hua left Longevity Town, he didn't have the time to go to Country Shi. Although Mo Jinli had sent Xiao Hua a Jade Eye message, Xiao Hua didn't have the time to go to Chongyun's sect to visit Mo Jinli. Xiao Hua's surprise was the same as Mo Jinli's. He hurriedly helped Mo Jinli up and asked curiously, "Mr. Mo, why are you at Star Picking Tower?" "Oh, I understand. You're also qualified to go to Star Moon Palace. Congratulations." Entering the Star Moon Palace was originally a joyous occasion. Xiao Hua did not even think before he opened his mouth to congratulate Mo Jinli. However, when these words reached Mo Jinli's ears, a layer of red actually appeared on his face, as if he was very ashamed. Seeing this, Xiao Hua was a little confused. Mo Jinli's eyes flickered. He followed Xiao Hua's tone and asked, "Could it be that you're also going to Star Moon Palace?" Yes, of course I'm going to Star Moon Palace. My purpose is the same as yours. Xiaohua didn't hide it and said casually, Mr. Mo, you and I are old friends. We've even experienced life and death together. There's no need to call me senior. Call me Xiaohua or fellow immortal. This isn't too appropriate. At first, Mo Jinli called Xiaohua fellow immortal. However, after Xiaohua's battle with Jiang Sheng, Mo Jinli felt that Xiaohua's strength surpassed his and that he was a hidden expert. Therefore, when he sent Xiaohua off, he called him senior instead. Now, it had been close to 300 years. Mo Jinli had already cultivated from a scholar who cultivated energy into qi to a scholar who cultivated qi into spirit. He wasn't far from becoming a grandmaster. Among his peers, his cultivation speed was considered fast. However, when he looked at Xiaohua now, he still felt that Xiaohua was stronger than him. How could he call Xiaohua fellow immortal? There's nothing inappropriate. Xiaohua smiled and said, why don't I turn around and leave? Then we'll do as you say. Mo Jinli had always been carefree. When he heard Xiaohua's words, he smiled and said, come. Fellow immortal Xiao, let me introduce you to a few old friends. Chapter 4473. As he spoke, Mo Jinli's face was filled with excitement. He pulled Xiaohua's sleeve and walked to the group of Confucian scholars where he was before. He shouted in a slightly loud voice, fellow immortals, let me introduce you. These are the Taoist friends I made in the immortal town 300 years ago. His name is Xiaohua. He is a cultivator who cares about the people. We fought against the water tribe of Liao River together. I remember now. Brother Mo, this is the Taoist cultivator with boundless strength that you were talking about. A martial cultivator with a slightly burly figure suddenly came to a realization. He hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed, I'm Pu Qing. Greetings, fellow immortal Xiao. Thank you. Xiaohua returned the greeting. Greetings, Xiaohua. Then, a few Confucian cultivators near Mo Jinli greeted Xiaohua politely. Although they were not as close as Pu Qing, they were still polite. When it was the turn of a Confucian cultivator with a white face and no beard, Mo Jinli's face froze. He looked a little unnatural. But he only hesitated a little, then said to Xiaohua with a smile, fellow immortal Xiao, this is Gongshu Minghu from the Gongshu family. He is less than 2,000 years old, but he is a master of the 5th level. He is a rare master among us. Mo Jinli was not flattering Xiaohua, but it sounded like he was flattering Xiaohua. Xiaohua did not understand why, but he still smiled and was about to say something. At this time, Mo Jinli said to Gongshu Minghu, Senior Gongshu, this is my good friend, Xiaohua. He is a Taoist cultivator with a good character. His future is limitless. You should get to know each other better. Gongshu Minghu had originally been whispering to a Confucian cultivator beside him, ignoring Mo Jinli's introduction. However, when he heard Mo Jinli's slightly exaggerated introduction, a smile appeared on his face. He had originally wanted to say a few words of encouragement. But when he heard Mo Jinli's last few words, his face changed. He looked at Xiaohua and said coldly, I don't like Taoist cultivators. There is no need to talk about helping, let alone getting to know each other better. As for good character, it sounds ridiculous. There are many people in the world with 2 legs, but there are not many Taoist cultivators with a heart. Mo Jinli's face turned pale as he gritted his teeth. Gongshu Minghu didn't care about Mo Jinli's expression. He turned his eyes from Xiaohua to Mo Jinli, and said seriously, Mo Yan, you have to remember what happened to the Chongyun sect. Remember why you lost your home. Your Chongyun sect was doing well in the country of Shi, why was it destroyed? Why were you expelled from the Chongyun sect? Wasn't it because of the Buddhist sect and the Taoist sect? You are already a literary master, why don't you learn from your mistakes? From Xiaohua's point of view, this Gongshu Minghu definitely deserved to be taught a lesson. But from Mo Jianli's point of view, although Gongshu Minghu did not give him any face, he was still a Confucian senior after all. These words might sound unpleasant, but they were still the teachings of a senior. Mo Jianli gritted his teeth and finally lowered his head. Yes, Senior Gongshu is right. Junior should have learned his lesson from being expelled from the sect, and from the tragedy of Chongyun's sect's destruction. That's great. Gongshu Minghu nodded. He glanced at Xiao Hua and said, then in the future, don't hang out with these cultivators who don't know your background. They will ruin your reputation and bring shame to us Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua didn't care about Gongshu Minghu's words. In his eyes, Gongshu Minghu was even less than an ant. He just frowned and looked at Mo Jianli, thinking about what Gongshu Minghu just said. Then, Mo Jianli slightly raised his head, looked at Gongshu Minghu and said word by word, Senior cares about Junior, Junior naturally has to thank Senior. However, Junior has the right to make friends with whoever he wants. Even if Junior's reputation is ruined, it is Junior's own business. Nobody can interfere. Besides, Junior doesn't think it is shameful to make friends with a Taoist cultivator who put his own life on the line and fought with the Water Tribe just to save the ordinary people of the Longevity Town. Junior also doesn't think Junior's actions will bring shame to Confucian cultivators. Junior is just a poor cultivator. I am far from Senior's arrogant identity and prominent position. Junior's actions can't be so good. Humph, the child can't be taught. Gongshu Minghu saw Mo Jianli ridiculing him. He sneered, flicked his sleeve and scolded, rotten wood can't be carved. With Gongshu Minghu's assertion, the few Confucian cultivators who were close to Mo Jianli before couldn't help but move away. Although Gongshu Minghu didn't leave, the dozen or so Confucian cultivators had already excluded Mo Jianli. Mo Jianli looked at the dozen or so Confucian cultivators who he hadn't introduced yet and sighed in his heart. Fellow Immortal Mo? Xiao Hua's voice was light again. Why were you expelled from the sect? How did Chongyun's sect get destroyed? What's the state of she now? Alas. Mo Jianli sighed. Looking at the invisible barrier between him and the other Confucian cultivators, he smiled bitterly and said, Fellow Immortal Xiao, it's a long story. Don't worry. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Take your time, Gongshu Minghu. Just as Mo Jianli was about to speak, a clear voice came from the stairs. Xiao Hua was stunned and turned his head in disbelief. He saw two beautiful women with bright eyes and white teeth standing there with arrogance on their faces. Wasn't one of them Gongshu Isin? Gongshu Minghu pulled away from Mo Jianli and was talking to the other Confucian cultivators with a trace of arrogance on his face. When he heard someone call his name, he turned his head impatiently. When he saw Gongshu Isin and the other woman, his face immediately lit up. He almost ran to them and bowed. Minghu greets your Aunt Exin and Aunt Ming. May I know why you called me Minghu? Gongshu Isin's face showed obvious disgust and disdain. She said coldly, Gongshu Minghu, although your surname is Gongshu, you're from a side branch of the Gongshu family. You're not listed in the genealogy. You call me Aunt. Where did that come from? If you called me Aunt in private, then so be it. I won't argue with you. But you called me Aunt in public. Are you disregarding the genealogy of the Gongshu family? You don't care about your face, but I do. Don't ruin the reputation of the Gongshu family and embarrass the Gongshu family. Gongshu Minghu knew that Gongshu Isin had always been arrogant and didn't put ordinary people in her eyes. But he didn't expect his words to cause so much trouble. However, Gongshu Minghu knew that although Gongshu Isin's words were unpleasant, every word was correct. Even if he wanted to refute, he couldn't. Just like when he scolded Mo Jianli from the perspective of a senior Confucian cultivator, he stole a glance around. There were already Confucian cultivators snickering. His face was hot and red. Sister Exin. The woman named Gongshu Yiming smiled and pulled Gongshu Isin's sleeve. Although Minghu can't be listed in the genealogy, in terms of seniority, he is more than 1,000 years old. He should call you aunt, a senior who is hundreds of years old. There was nothing wrong with what he said. Why do you have to be angry with that junior? Humph. Gongshu Isun rolled her eyes at Gongshu Yiming and said to Gongshu Minghu, I won't argue with you this time. Uncle Jingyi called you down for something. Hearing this, Gongshu Minghu felt relieved and hurriedly said with a smile, I know. Thank you, aunt. Senior, however, just as he was about to take a step, Gongshu Isun suddenly screamed. She looked behind her and cried out in surprise, Ah! You! Gongshu Minghu was shocked. He looked at Gongshu Isun, who suddenly lost her composure and didn't know what happened. Looking at Gongshu Exion's eyes again, she stared at Gongshu Minghu's back. After a few breaths, her face flushed red. She seemed to be suppressing her inner excitement. She hurriedly said, Jinren Shao, why are you here? Why didn't I see you enter Star-Picking Tower? Shao. Jinren Shao. Shao. Senior. Although Gongshu Minghu didn't turn around and didn't know if Xiao Hua was the senior Gongshu Isun was talking about. But he was stunned because he knew that behind him were Mo Jianli and the others. Among the dozen or so Confucian cultivators, there was no one with the surname Shao. And the special one, Jinren Shao. Wasn't that the title of a Taoist cultivator? Sure enough, Xiao Hua's voice sounded faintly, so it's Miss Isun. I haven't seen you for hundreds of years. How have you been? I'm naturally well. Gongshu Isun's arrogance had long disappeared. Facing this Xiao Hua, who was only 600 years old, but his Taoist cultivation and formation skills were far higher than her, she really didn't have the right to be proud. And the question of whether he was only 400 years old also gave birth to a knot in her heart in these 200 years. How have you been? Gongshu Isun was like a little girl, foolishly asking back. But in an instant, she realized it was inappropriate. While blushing, she hurriedly turned around and grabbed Gongshu Isun, cheerfully saying, Sister Isun, this is my Chang. When she said the word Chang, Gongshu Isun's voice instantly lowered a lot. This is the formation master I told you about, a Taoist expert. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to step into the upper 5th level in 200 years. Oh, sister, don't look down on him because he's only at the upper 4th level. He's the best at deceiving people. That year, Sister Gusu was at the middle 5th level, but she admitted that she wasn't his match. Oh, right, I forgot again. He's also a lightning cultivator expert. You can compare notes with him on the 5 Qi Righteous Thunder. Hee hee. Chapter 4474. Gongshu Exian, who was a little shy at first, was in high spirits at the end. She couldn't help but laugh, as if the toy she had hidden for a long time was finally seen by others. Boom. Gongshu Minghu's head seemed to be hit by a hammer. His face was pale, and he didn't know what to say or do. Junior Gongshu Ming greets Daoist Xiao. Seeing Gongshu Exian praise Xiao Hua so much, although Gongshu Ming was puzzled, he didn't dare to neglect and respectfully saluted. Get up. Xiao Hua lightly waved his hand and said, Xiao Hua and Exian are old friends, you don't need to be polite. Many thanks Daoist Xiao. Gongshu Ming saw Xiao Hua's bearing, and his suspicions were mostly gone. The atmosphere in the hall was a little strange. After all, many people saw Gongshu Minghu humiliate Mo Jianli, and at this time, these two girls from the Gongshu family, who were called aunts by Gongshu Minghu, actually called Xiao Hua Sr., this really stepped on Gongshu Minghu's face to the ground. Daoist Xiao. Suddenly, Gongshu Ming seemed to think of something and respectfully said, My Gongshu family's granduncle Jing Yi is downstairs, would Daoist like to see him? This. Xiao Hua hesitated and replied, Xiao Hua and the Gongshu family aren't familiar with the others, it's not appropriate. Don't worry. Hearing Xiao Hua say he wasn't familiar with the others, Gongshu Isun hurriedly called out, Daoist Xiao, my family's granduncle Jing Yi is also proficient in some Daoist techniques. He's already a 7th level Daoist master, only one step away from becoming a sage of literature. If Daoist Xiao listens to granduncle Jing Ye's advice, perhaps your cultivation will improve even further. Xiao Hua looked around at the expressions of the Confucian cultivators. He knew that after Gongshu Exian and the others left, these Confucian cultivators would gather again, so he nodded and said, "In that case, Miss Exian, please lead the way." "Good. Daoist Xiao, please." Gongshu Exian and Gongshu Ming looked at each other, eyes filled with joy, and quickly walked up the stairs. Xiao Hua turned to look at Mo Jianli and smiled. "Daoist Mo, come with me, I have something to ask you." "This, good." Mo Jianli was even more confused when he heard that Xiao Hua's cultivation was even stronger than a 5th grade origin energy. However, he didn't dare to delay and hurriedly followed after. On the other hand, Gongshu Exian had come to find Gongshu Minghu. Now, he was left here. Gongshu Exian and Gongshu Ming had forgotten about him before they left. Gongshu Minghu hesitated for a moment. Although he looked embarrassed, he still hurriedly followed Mo Jianli out of the hall. Gongshu Jingye was already waiting for him downstairs. He did not dare to be negligent. Several people had just disappeared and the entire hall was once again filled with discussions. Although he didn't know what they were talking about before, their only topic now was probably Xiao Hua, Daoist Xiao. Xiao Hua followed Gongshu Exian and Gongshu Ming to the stairs. Gongshu Exian and Gongshu Ming walked in front, whispering something. Occasionally, they would sneak a glance at Xiao Hua, then pursed their lips and chuckled, looking very excited. Xiao Hua looked on helplessly. He was embarrassed to eavesdrop. However, he and Gongshu Exian had only talked about Sang Langzi's cave residence. Presumably, the two were talking about the thrill at that time. Xiao Hua nodded politely to the two, and also whispered to Mo Jianli about the state of Shi. As for Gongshu Minghu, he followed behind the four from afar, like a tail. The Gongshu family's floor was not close to here. There was no flying restriction in Star Picking Tower. However, in order to show respect, everyone did not fly unless there was an urgent matter. Gongshu Exian and the others walked down the stairs. After about the time it took to brew a cup of tea, they passed several floors of pavilions and walked out of the stairs. Along the way, there were many family disciples going up and down the stairs. Many people greeted Gongshu Exian. Clearly, Gongshu Exian's reputation was very well known among the family. Many family disciples almost ignored Xiao Hua and Mo Jianli. Xiao Hua naturally did not have time to look at their faces. He frowned as he listened to Mo Jianli's story. At this time, he also understood the reason. After Mo Jianli, Qiu Jian, Li Mo Ming and Ji Dong returned from the disaster relief in Shi, because of their contributions, they were rewarded. Mo Jianli was rewarded with a higher level cultivation method. However, this reward was not fully implemented. Because there was no fruit of Guanyin Bodhisattva in Longevity Town, the entire Shi became the focus of Yu Province, and even the 9 provinces of the hidden Immortal continent. Not only was Xiao Hua's battle with Jiang Xing not mentioned, even Mo Jianli and the others' rescue of the people in the town of Longevity was also erased. There were even Confucian cultivators who blamed Chongyun's sect for the lack of Guanyin Bodhisattva in the town of Longevity on the unfavorable inspection of the development of the Buddhism sect. They did not fulfill the responsibility of a Confucian sect, especially when the town of Longevity was slowly becoming the #1 town of the Buddhism sect in the Zhangxian continent. The Confucian cultivators made things difficult for the Chongyun sect. They demanded that the Chongyun sect be responsible for this matter and proposed countermeasures. Under such circumstances, the Chongyun sect could only push out Zhu Junfeng, Mr. Taiyan and the others from the Longevity Academy, as well as Mo Jianli, Qiu Jian, Li Mo Ming and Ji Dong. After all, Zhu Junfeng was in charge of the Longevity Academy, and Mo Jianli and the others had been to the Longevity town, and had personally experienced that milestone. Punishment was necessary, and so was punishment. Everything had to be explained to the Confucian cultivators of Yu province. Zhu Junfeng and Mr. Tai An's punishment did not need to be discussed in detail. As the leader of Qiu Jian and the others, Mo Jianli did not want the other three to bear the blame, so he took all the blame. Fortunately, although Shangguan Feiyu, as the head of Chongyun sect, could not resist the pressure of Yu province's Confucian cultivators, he was lenient in dealing with Mo Jianli. He did not make things too difficult for Mo Jianli, and only expelled him from Chongyun sect. After Mo Jianli left Chongyun sect, he did not change his name and join other sections. He only became a professor in some unknown colleges. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. Mo Jianli, who had thrown away glory in trifles, returned to tranquility. He, who was engrossed in reading, found the opportunity to break through the noble spirit river. His cultivation also flowed like the river, and he reached the level of a scholar. However, after reaching the level of a scholar, Mo Jianli needed a more profound Confucian cultivation technique. Although the noble spirit river was the most widespread technique left in the hidden immortal land, after reaching the level of a scholar, it belonged to the secrets of various sections. It was very difficult for cultivators without a sect to obtain it. Mo Jianli could only go to Zhai Xinglu to find a suitable technique. Later, due to a coincidence, Mo Jianli passed the test of Zhai Xinglu, and was listed as one of the candidates to enter Xingyue Palace. Unlike Xiao Hua, Mo Jianli had an agreement with Zhai Xinglu. He would listen to Zhai Xinglu's arrangements and participate in the grand meeting of Xingyue Palace, and Zhai Xinglu would provide Mo Jianli with the conditions to cultivate. With this opportunity, Mo Jianli's cultivation became much smoother. In the past 200 years, his progress was also gratifying. When Xingyue Palace discovered that Xingyue Palace might appear in the sacred realm of Thousand Demons, Mo Jianli and the rest of the cultivators were sent to the sacred realm of Thousand Demons by Zhai Xinglu. Therefore, not only did Mo Jianli not know about Bai Qingyu, but he also did not know about the divine demon blood pool. As for Chongyun sect, when the Longevity town became the #1 town of the Buddhist sect, it was already in the eyes of the Bodhisattvas. It was destined to be the center of tragedy. Chongyun sect did a lot of effort to expel Mo Jianli and punish Zhu Junfeng. They also made a lot of compromises. The entire Chongyun sect was like duckweed in the wind and rain, struggling bitterly. However, after the Longevity town's Shaojin temple's abbot, Lushan, who did not have any cultivation, was mysteriously killed, Chongyun sect could no longer hold on. Although this incident was the last straw that broke the Chongyun sect's back, it was also a heavenly tribulation that the small Chongyun sect could not withstand. Chongyun sect was annihilated by a bodhisattva who came out of nowhere. Whether the bodhisattva who annihilated the sect was a Buddhist or a Confucian cultivator, whether he was venting his anger or trying to frame them, no one knew the truth, just like Lushan's death. The death of the entire Chongyun sect was even more tragic than Lushan's death. Lushan's death almost led to a war between the Immortals and Buddhas, which led to the Nirvana Sutra seeking. But the death of Chongyun sect was really like duckweed, falling into the wind and rain. Unless Mo Jianli mentioned it to Xiao Hua now, who else would remember that unremarkable little Confucian sect 200 years ago? Seeing Gongshu Yisun and Gongshu Yiming slow down, Xiao Hua stopped and looked at Mo Jianli, saying, "Jianli, when I first arrived at the Longevity town, I encountered the Liaojiang incident. I also met a Confucian cultivator like you, who is as noble as a river. I have a very good impression of you. The Liaojiang incident, the root cause is related to a disciple of mine. How about this, as compensation, from now on, you will follow me?" At this point, Xiao Hua hesitated again. He originally wanted to take Mo Jianli as his disciple. However, he also had a premonition that he could not casually take in his disciples. Previously, he took in Yuanya, Fu Jiwen, Lu Yi, Wang Bianfei, Wu Tian, Chang Yuan, Jiang Hong and Yu Zhongquan as inner disciples. But when they arrived at the ruins, Wu Tian chose to stay in the upper world for his own pursuit. Xiao Hua's inner disciples stopped at 7. After that, he took in Li Xiang, Xiong Yi, Prince Lan, Changyu, Xian Songzi, and Reverend Jingting as outer disciples. In Bai Qingyu, Xiao Hua took in Ao Zhantian and Su Tingzi as outer disciples. However, it was also in Bai Qingyu that Changyu died, Prince Lan's loyalty was doubted, and Xiao Hua's number of outer disciples fell to 7. Perhaps it was because he had just experienced the hand of cause and effect. Xiao Hua became alert. He felt that he could only accept 7 disciples and could not accept more. If he accepted Mo Jianli, then he would have more than 7 disciples. Even if there was really something wrong with Prince Lan, Mo Jianli had already taken the last disciple spot. But Mo Jianli was only a 4th-level literature master. With Xiao Hua's strength, he probably did not have much time to teach such a low-level Confucian disciple. Moreover, Xiao Hua already had a candidate in mind for the last disciple spot. Therefore, Xiao Hua hesitated. Chapter 44-75. Junior appreciates senior's kind intentions. Mo Jianli smiled. Junior is a Confucian cultivator. It would be inconvenient for me to follow senior. Moreover, Junior is a disciple of the Chongyun sect, which is related to the Longevity Town's conflict. It would also bring trouble to senior. Ha! Xiao Hua laughed and said, if you didn't say this Xiao would have hesitated. But since you have spoken your mind, how could this Xiao disappoint you? This Xiao may not have the time to teach you a Confucian cultivation technique, but this Xiao remembers that you should cultivate a Confucian sword technique. This Xiao has a disciple who is good at sword techniques. This Xiao thinks that he should take you as a disciple of the Fortune Gate. Fortune Gate? Mo Jianli was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears and shouted, when did senior enter a Confucian sect? This junior doesn't seem to have heard of a Confucian sect called the Fortune Gate. While the two were talking, Gongshu Minghu had already walked behind them. Xiao Hua looked at Gongshu Minghu and walked towards the pavilion. He said, this matter is settled. When we come out of the Bright Moon Palace, this Xiao will take you to see him. Senior. Mo Jianli hurriedly chased after him, wanting to say something. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua smiled and said, you don't have to say anything. If you see this Xiao's disciple and feel that it's not suitable, then it's fine. It's not too late to refuse. Xiao Hua didn't think that Mo Jianli would refuse Yu Zhongquan and Chang Yuan, who were already at the 7th level. Oh. Okay. Facing Xiao Hua's arbitrary decision, Mo Jianli was helpless. He nodded slightly and followed behind Xiao Hua. However, his thoughts were different from Xiao Hua's. He didn't believe that Xiao Hua's disciple would have any outstanding cultivation. Of course, he didn't complain about why Xiao Hua didn't take him as a disciple. Mo Jianli was a grateful person. After being expelled and homeless, he felt that Xiao Hua's kindness was a kind of enjoyment. Turning the corner, they came across a small hall. Gongshu Yisin and Gongshu Yiming walked to the entrance of the hall and looked back. When they saw Xiao Hua and Mo Jianli coming over, they smiled at each other and quickly walked in. When Xiao Hua entered the palace, he saw a tall young Confucian cultivator who looked similar to Gongshu Yisin. The Confucian cultivator had a smile on his face as he looked at Xiao Hua. Next to him, Gongshu Yisin was holding his arm and acting like a spoiled little girl. On the two sides of this Confucian cultivator, there were a few men and women who were around the 5th or 6th grade of origin energy. These men and women all had imposing appearances and were intelligent on the inside, like dragons and phoenixes among men. Needless to say, this person was the Gongshu Jingyi that Gongshu Yisin had mentioned, the 7th level elemental energy grandmaster. Looking at Gongshu Jingye sitting steadily on the chair, waiting for him to pay his respects, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He had really lifted a stone to smash his own foot. He originally disliked Zhu Qing's respect for him and wanted to find a more approachable feeling. He didn't expect that as soon as he met Mo Jianli, he would be humiliated by Gongshu Minghu. Gongshu Yisin came over to smooth things over for him, and then he had to follow her to pay his respects to a 7th-level elemental energy grandmaster. Gongshu Isin had good intentions. After all, the guidance or care of a high-level elemental energy grandmaster was a kind of opportunity. Gongshu Isin would disdain to introduce ordinary cultivators. However, Gongshu Isin had met Xiaohua. How could a human Taoist Grand Ascension stage cultivator meet a Confucian grandmaster with the power of a junior? Etiquette, etiquette. Xiaohua sighed. The etiquette of Confucian cultivators is a bit pedantic, but in essence, it is a kind of order. As the Immortal Realm's executioner, Suji upholds it. I was a bit rash today. Thinking of this, Xiaohua slightly straightened his body, about to reveal his cultivation level. However, at this moment, a slightly excited voice came from behind him. Yi Ming, you also came to the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm? I just came to Star Picking Tower and heard that the Gongshu family was also here. I was thinking that since you are a junior of the Gongshu family, how could you not be on this trip to the Star Moon Palace? Look, this is the thunder amplification wood that I found for you. It will definitely be useful for you to cultivate the 5 Qi righteous thunder. Ha! Xiaohua did not need to turn around, nor did he need to look back, nor did he need to use his divine perception to check. Just this voice alone was enough for Xiaohua to laugh. He could clearly tell that this was Duan Muqing, who had formed a grudge with him in Star Picking Tower in the Bronze Pillar Nation. That night, Xiaohua had taught Duan Muqing and Duan Muqiu a lesson. He had also said in front of Duan Muqing that he wanted to see if the so-called Confucian family still had justice, fairness, and justice. Duan Muqing had also made it clear that she did not believe in justice, fairness, and justice. She had asked Xiaohua to wait for her justice. After that, when Xiaohua had almost forgotten, he had finally waited for the Duanmu family's justice. That was the pursuit of Duanmu Yangsheng in Sung Langzi's cave. Duanmu Yangsheng could be considered a hot-blooded man, but he was after all a disciple of the Duanmu family. Although he admired Xiaohua, he had no choice but to kill him. Fortunately, although Xiaohua's strength at that time was slightly inferior to Duanmu Yangsheng, it was not a problem for him to escape. Therefore, he was able to escape from the Duanmu family's justice. Duanmu Yangsheng had also obtained an opportunity in Song Langzi's cave and did not find trouble with Xiaohua again. What Xiaohua did not expect was that when he had just returned to the 3 continents from the primitive continent and had not even taken a step into the hidden immortal continent, all the karma from before had actually appeared here. Not only did he see Mo Jinli and Gongshu Exian, but he also saw Duan Muqing, whom he had almost forgotten. Suddenly, Xiaohua had a bad premonition. Damn it, it can't be. Could it be that Su Ji's divination skills are so miraculous? This Star Moon Palace is indeed the last time I leave. When the 2 of them return to the Immortal Realm, will also have the opportunity to choose? Otherwise, with so many old grudges, how could they all appear here? Of course, this thought was just a flash. He had some understanding that it was not his old grudges, but the opportunity of the Star Moon Palace. Because of the appearance of the Star Moon Palace, all the families in the hidden immortal continent would send disciples who needed opportunities to come to the Star Moon Palace. Not only the disciples of the families who had grudges with him, but also the disciples of the families who had grudges with him would all have the opportunity to come to the Star Moon Palace. They would also, at the appropriate time, resolve the grudges between them. While Xiaohua was thinking, Duan Muqing had already said something excitedly. She walked past Xiaohua and arrived in front of Gongshu Jingyi. She bowed and said, "Great-grand-uncle, Junior Duan Muqing from the Duanmu family pays respect to great-grand-uncle." Gongshu Jingyi was waiting for Xiaohua to greet him, but Duan Muqing's sudden appearance stole Xiaohua's limelight. Gongshu Jingyi could not stand in front of the Duanmu family. He retracted his gaze from Xiaohua and raised his hand. "Get up, this is Star Picking Tower, no need to be too polite." Humph. Gongshu Exian was not willing to give Duan Muqing a good face. She snorted and said, "You're just a branch of the Duanmu family, and you dare to call yourself a disciple of the family? Aren't you afraid that the Duanmu family's ancestor will scold you? This. Duanmu Qing did not dare to say anything in front of Gongshu Exin. Exin. Gongshu Jing Ye's lips curled. He knew clearly about Gongshu Exin's arrogance. He also knew that her scolding of Duanmu Qing was reasonable. However, he could only scold her. Duanmu Qing is also a disciple of the family. There are some words that you cannot say casually. Great-grand-uncle, you think I want to say it? Gongshu Exin said coldly. If he did not pester Ming Jijia, even if I saw him, I would only treat him as a toad. He did not go back to look for a mirror. He is not only a branch disciple of the Duanmu family, he is also a literary master who has just stepped into spirit-refining qi. How can he be worthy of Ming Jijia? Moreover, Ming Jijia had already told him clearly 100 years ago that she did not wish to see him again. But what about him? Seeing Ming Jijia's soft personality, forcing her step by step, showing an infatuated face in front of the elders to gain sympathy. Isn't it just a thunder-amplifying wood? What's so great about it that he would give it to Ming Jijia in front of great-grand-uncle? This kind of wild ambition, great-grand-uncle is embarrassed to say it, but I will say it. Exin. Gongshu Ming at the side also seemed to be unable to bear it. She pulled Gongshu Exin's sleeve and said, "Don't say it in front of everyone, this is not good." What is not good about it? It is because you are always thinking for others that you have landed in such an awkward situation. Now many disciples of the aristocratic families know that this guy is pursuing sister. Even if there are outstanding disciples who want to propose marriage to sister, they would be embarrassed. They would be afraid of brushing away the face of the Duanmu family. Gongshu Exin understood Duanmu Qing's thoughts and hit the nail on the head. In reality, the Duanmu family does not even know of this guy's plans. It is not that bad. Gongshu Ming's face was slightly red as she said in a low voice. Xiaohua originally did not like Gongshu Exin's outspokenness, but hearing it now made him very happy. He smiled and stopped walking, watching with interest. Duanmu Qing naturally did not know that Xiaohua was here. His face was slightly pale as he said in a low voice, "Senior Gongshu, Junior knows that my cultivation is shallow and my background is not as good as Senior's. So from Senior's point of view, Junior's actions are indeed so. But Junior can say it to Senior without any reservation, to the disciples of the Gongshu family. Junior can even say it to the heavens and the earth with a clear conscience." Love had no limits, no rank, and no strength. Perhaps Ming Lady feels that Junior is not suitable, but from the moment Junior saw Ming Lady, I have already treated her as my fairy. Junior does not dare to think too much because I am afraid that if I think too much, it will make that impression dim. Junior can only think faintly when the lanterns are lit, and hope that the night will make this longing last a little longer. Junior also knows that Junior is not worthy of Miss Ming, but Junior is willing to be one of Miss Ming's many admirers. Junior hopes that her path of cultivation will be smooth. Junior is willing to give up everything for her. Chapter 4476. Duanmu Qing spoke with deep affection. Not only did Gongshu Ming blush, even Gongshu Exin felt embarrassed and felt that she might have gone overboard. Duanmu Qing continued, Junior heard that Miss Ming's 5 Chi Thunder had reached a bottleneck and was unable to break through, so I have been thinking of a way for her. 200 years ago, Junior heard that the star-picking tower of Copper Pillar Country was bidding for the thunder-developing wood. Junior hurriedly went there to bid for the thunder-developing wood and give it to Miss Ming to comprehend. Unfortunately, Junior was deceived by a despicable Dao sect cultivator and was unable to bid for the thunder-developing wood. In the following days, Junior has been looking for opportunities. Fortunately, the heavens were moved by Junior. A few years ago, Junior finally bid for a similar thunder-developing wood at the auction of the Luo Merchant Union. After Junior obtained the thunder-developing wood, Junior hurriedly went to find Miss Yiming. Unfortunately, Miss Yiming was no longer in the Gongshu family. Junior asked around but could not find Miss Yiming's whereabouts. Later, Junior heard news of the Star Moon Palace and immediately understood. Although Junior is not a candidate to enter the Star Moon Palace, Junior still tried my best to ask a senior in the family to bring Junior here. Junior does not wish to enter the Star Moon Palace. Junior only wishes to see Miss Yiming here and give her this thunder-developing wood. Junior also knows that as long as Miss Yiming enters the Star Moon Palace, after she comes out, her 5 chi thunder will definitely break through the bottleneck and step into the upper 5th grade of essence force. Junior is even more inferior. However, Junior does not regret it. Junior hopes that Junior can be a pebble under Miss Yiming's feet. As long as Miss Yiming can step on Junior safely, Junior will be satisfied. As she spoke, Duan Muqing took the thunder-developing wood and walked in front of Gongshu Yiming. She looked at Gongshu Yiming affectionately. Damn it. Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. This guy really knows how to talk. I can't compare to him. Even Xiao Hua said so. Gongshu Yiming's face was naturally hot. She lowered her head slightly and raised her slender white hand to take the thunder-developing wood. Seeing that Gongshu Yiming was about to take the thunder-amplifying wood, Gongshu Xian, who was trying to break up the couple, came to her senses. She hurriedly pulled Gongshu Yiming behind her and said coldly, I hate this kind of flowery speech the most. You want to trick me with a piece of wood? If you have the ability, come here on a rainbow cloud. Gongshu Xian looked up at Xiao Hua and said, Xiao Hua, I remember you have a thunder-devouring bead, right? 200 years is enough for you. Why don't you lend it to big sister Yiming first? Don't worry, after you borrow it, my Gongshu family will definitely protect you and won't let the Immortal Palace find trouble with you. Xiao Hua. When Duan Muqing heard Xiao Hua's name, she was startled as if she was bitten by a snake or scorpion. She turned to look at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua had a bitter smile on his face, but he was feeling very good in his heart. He had just used his divine ability and was about to make trouble. When he heard Gongshu Xian was disrupting the situation, he immediately took 2 steps forward and touched his nose. He looked thoughtfully at Duan Muqing and said, Young Master Duanmu, that despicable cultivator from the star-picking tower in the Bronze Pillar country who used despicable means to deceive you is here. I want to ask you, what despicable means did I use to deceive you at the auction at Star-Picking Tower? You. Duan Muqing was dumbfounded. Those few words of his were merely to set off the atmosphere, to emphasize the hardships of not being able to obtain the thunder amplification wood. However, he never expected that Xiao Hua, whom he hadn't seen for several hundred years, would actually be right behind him. Moreover, he had directly passed by Xiao Hua without even noticing him. Moreover, Xiao Hua's question was even more heart-wrenching. Not to mention that Xiao Hua did not have any despicable means, even if he did, that was Star-Picking Tower's auction, and it was from hundreds of years ago. Duan Muqing bringing up old scores in Star-Picking Tower's territory was not only giving Star-Picking Tower a bad look, but also finding trouble for herself. Details determine success or failure. The remorseful Duan Muqing really wanted to grab the extra words out of everyone's ears and swallow them herself. Ha ha ha. When Gongshu Xian heard this, a look of surprise appeared on her face. She hurriedly said, What? You were the one who bid for the thunder-developing wood? How could you have won against young Master Duanmu from the Duanmu family? Quickly tell us, how despicable were you at that time? Seeing that Gongshu Xian did not mind blowing things up, Xiao Hua was also happy to add insult to injury. He nodded and said, Even if Lady Gongshu did not say this, I would still say it. Not to mention my innocence, even Star-Picking Tower's justice will be tarnished. Hearing Xiao Hua mention justice, Duan Muqing's face turned pale. Xiao Hua did not add any details and narrated everything from the time he met Duan Muqiu to the time he said, fairness, justice, and justice, to Duan Muqing. Indeed, without waiting for him to say much, when the group of Gongshu family disciples heard that Duan Muqing sat on the dragon horse carriage and headed toward Star-Picking Tower, their faces were filled with disdain. The aristocratic family's carriages all had their own standards and were not for any aristocratic family disciples to sit on. Gongshu Exian could sit on it, Gongshu Ming could sit on it, Murong Songyun could also sit on it, but Duan Muqing, a side family disciple, could not sit on it. Because she could not represent the Duanmu family. Xiaohua naturally did not know about this rule, but the Gongshu family disciples knew it clearly. Without mentioning anything else, how could Gongshu Ming accept her flamboyant personality? Oh, that's right. After explaining the matter at Star-Picking Tower, Xiaohua slapped his forehead. Looking at Gongshu Exian, he seemed to have thought of something and said, I almost forgot, Duanmu Gongzi is a person who keeps his promises. That was what I said that day. Duan Muqing, I will remember your words. But I will give you a word of advice. Don't think that no one knows what is right and wrong here. Even the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators cannot stop the mouths of the people. A Duanmu family carriage driver is now Jin Gue. You can only let him bully others, but others cannot retaliate? I will wait for your Duanmu family's condemnation. I want to see if the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators still have justice, justice, and justice. And at that time, Duanmu Gongzi's reply was, justice, justice, and justice. Let's go, let this Taoist wait for his justice. Xiaohua looked at Duan Muqing and smiled, Duanmu Gongzi, did I say anything wrong? Duan Muqing bit her lips and did not reply. And the result? Say it, say it. Gongshu Exian was interested and urged, what happened after that? After that. Lady Gongshu, do you still remember the 5th grade middle-tier Confucian cultivator who suddenly appeared in the Cloud Mountain maze? Xiaohua asked. Gongshu Exian actually did not have any impression of Duanmu Liangsheng. But at this time, she did not know how to reply. She nodded like a chicken pecking rice, yes, yes, that extremely powerful Confucian cultivator. And he is the justice that the Duanmu family gave me. Xiaohua said with a smile. Oh. Duanmu Liangsheng? Order of death? Gongshu Jingyi, who was at the side, was watching the younger generation quarrel like a play. However, when he heard this, he suddenly understood. He frowned and said a few words in a low voice. He looked at Duan Muqing and didn't say anything. However, the disciples of the Gongshu clan who were present all despised her. Everyone knew what Duan Muqing had done after the order of death. In front of such sinister thoughts, the sweet words that Duan Muqing had said earlier had become a honey sword. Yes. Xiaohua smiled, the Duanmu family's order of death is the justice that Duanmu Gongzi gave me. If not for my good luck, I am afraid that I would not have the chance to talk about Duanmu Gongzi's heroic deeds in front of everyone. Sigh. Duan Muqing sighed slightly. She looked at the crowd and her gaze landed on Gongshu Ming's face. She said, things are not as simple as Immortal Xiao said. However, I do not wish to explain anything at this moment. Because the same thing can be said by different people, it will have different effects. I admit that I do not have a glib tongue like Immortal Xiao. Everything will be revealed in the future. However, Miss Ming, even though I may have done something wrong, your cultivation cannot be delayed. This thunder-amplifying wood is very important to you. It is innocent, you must accept it. What is the use of a mere thunder-amplifying wood? It is just a chicken rib. Only those who do not understand the lightning cultivation arts would treat it as a treasure. Xiaohua took 2 steps forward and disdainfully glanced at the jade box in Duan Muqing's hands. Inside the jade box, there was a lone thunder-amplifying wood that was sealed within. Xiaohua said coldly, Duan Muqing, do you think that you can let Miss Ming's 5-qi legitimate thunder break through the bottleneck with a piece of wood that has been struck by lightning? If that is the case, there are probably a bunch of lightning cultivators in this world, right? You. Duan Muqing tried her best to maintain a cultured and refined image in front of Gongshu Yiming. Even when Xiao Hua exposed her earlier, she did not get angry. She understood that Xiao Hua was just a Dao cultivator. Even if she was from a side branch of the Duanmu clan, she was still a disciple of the clan. Her words were far more important than Xiao Hua's words. There was no need for her to confront Xiao Hua here. She could just wait for an opportunity to make up for it. But now, Xiao Hua had once again belittled the thunder amplification wood that he had painstakingly found as worthless. He looked at Xiao Hua and said coldly, "This one does not have the qualifications to know if this thunder amplification wood is useful for Miss Yiming's cultivation." However, this thunder amplification wood was something that Miss Yiming occasionally mentioned on that day, so this one remembered it in my heart. This one also admits that this one really does not know how useful this item is for Miss Yiming to break through her bottleneck. However, I know that as long as I work hard, Miss Yiming will definitely benefit from this thunder amplifying wood. What about you? Could it be that a Dao cultivator who is not even at the 5th grade of elemental energy knows that this thunder amplifying wood is useless to Miss Yiming? You, what qualifications do you have to say such useless words? Chapter 4477. At this moment, Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't put Duan Muqing in his eyes and wouldn't be so bored as to argue with her. Xiao Hua faintly smiled. He raised his hand and took out a silk handkerchief from his bosom. He said, "For me to be able to say such words, I naturally have my reasons. I won't be like some people, whose mouth is full of nonsense and only one word is true." Saying this, Xiao Hua placed the silk handkerchief in front of Gongshu Yiming, saying, "Miss Yiming, do you think this is useful for your cultivation of the 5 Qi Thunder?" This is? Seeing Xiao Hua take out a silk handkerchief instead of thunder developing bead or thunder developing wood, let alone Gongshu Exin, even Gongshu Yiming blushed. She looked at Xiao Hua with some confusion. After all, silk handkerchiefs were mostly for private use by female cultivators. Men and women giving silk handkerchiefs had other meanings. Damn it. Others might be puzzled, but Duan Muqing was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She already thought that Xiao Hua was revealing something to Gongshu Yiming in front of everyone, flirting in front of her. "Xiao Hua, what do you mean by this?" Gongshu Exin was straightforward, shouting, "I told you to take out the thunder amplifying bead, you, what do you mean by this? Why don't Miss Exin take a look first?" Xiao Hua turned and smiled at Gongshu Exin, saying, "You have a certain level of attainment in formations, you should be able to see it." Oh. Gongshu Exin looked at Gongshu Jingyi. That Gongshu Jingyi just looked at her with a smile and didn't say anything. He was also young, how could he not know the jealousy between young people? Seeing Gongshu Jingyi not saying anything, Gongshu Exin said, raising her hand to take the silk handkerchief. When she took the silk handkerchief, she used her silver moon pupil. Just one look and her expression changed. She looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. The clear eye technique in her eyes didn't disappear. She exclaimed, "Xiao Hua, it's true. Don't worry." Xiao Hua smiled, "Don't you know my reputation?" Che. Gongshu Exin retracted her silver moon pupil, curling her lips, saying, "What reputation do you have? That day in the cave, you cheated so many people." Then, Gongshu Exin didn't give the silk handkerchief to Gongshu Yiming. Instead, she held it in her hand, smiling at Yiming. "Sister Yiming, can I make a deal with you? Can you lend this item to sister to study?" "What is this?" Gongshu Yiming looked confusedly at the silk handkerchief in Gongshu Exin's hand and asked. Gongshu Exin opened her mouth and seemed to have some misgivings. She didn't give the handkerchief to Gongshu Yiming and transmitted to Gongshu Yiming, "This is the Immortal Palace's 5 brocade cloud painting." Ah! Gongshu Yiming was ecstatic. She almost cried out, "How is this possible?" The 5-chi thunder was the purest form of cultivation in the Immortal Palace. The Gongshu clan also had it, but the flaws were obvious. They couldn't fix the flaws in their cultivation method during the tribulation. Therefore, Gongshu Yiming had always wanted to get the cultivation method of the 5-chi thunder from the Immortal Palace. This 5-brocade cloud painting was not a complete lightning cultivation method, but it contained the 5-chi thunder. If Gongshu Yiming had this item to study, she could easily break through her current bottleneck. Gongshu Yiming screamed and quickly covered her mouth, smiling at Xiao Hua. "Thank you, immortal friend Xiao." Xiao Hua smiled. "No need to be so polite, if there's anything you don't understand." Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, Duan Muqing, who was at the side, retracted her hand and withdrew the awkwardness in everyone's eyes. She interrupted Xiao Hua's words and said with a hint of anger, "Xiao Hua, I did not want to lower myself to your level when you used the matter from several hundred years ago to frame me. But then you used filthy words to slander my Duanmu clan's kill order. This matter involves the dignity of my Duanmu clan, so I represent the Duanmu clan to invite you to join the battle to bury the hatchet." N. When Gongshu Jingyi heard this, he unconsciously snorted from his nose and said unhappily, "Duan Muqing, you are in my Gongshu family's pavilion, representing the Duanmu family to challenge Xiao Hua. What is the meaning of this?" Duan Muqing was startled, and immediately realized the impropriety of her words. She hurriedly smiled and said, "Great-granduncle, it is all Junior's fault. Junior was really disheartened by this Dao sect cultivator. My words were wrong. Junior apologizes to great-granduncle, and apologizes to the elders of the Gongshu clan." Finishing, Duan Muqing did not give Gongshu Exian and the others a chance to speak. She said to Xiao Hua, "Xiao Hua, you and I originally had a personal grudge. Now, the battle to bury the hatchet at Zhai Xinglu is about to start. You may not be a disciple of a great clan, but you are in Zhai Xinglu now. You can still join the battle. How about it? In the battle to bury the hatchet, let's settle our previous grudges." This time, Duan Muqing kept on talking about personal grievances. Gongshu Jingyi just looked indifferently and didn't say anything. Gongshu Exian glared at Duan Muqing and said coldly, "What? Angry out of humiliation? All your tricks have been exposed, you can't live with your face? You want to be silenced by the battle to bury the hatchet? One look and you can tell he is a bluff. You can't beat Xiao Hua, so you want to use the power of the Duanmu clan to suppress him?" Then, Gongshu Exian waved her hand at Xiao Hua and said, "Xiao Hua, ignore him. You are not a disciple of a great clan. Why are you participating in the battle to bury the hatchet?" Senior Exian. Duan Muqing looked at Gongshu Exian and said seriously, "Xiao Hua may not be a disciple of a great clan, but he is in Zhai Xinglu, and this is before the opening of the Star Moon Palace. He also has a grudge with Junior. This meets the conditions for the battle. Of course, if Xiao Hua does not wish to participate, Junior will not force him. He only needs to apologize to Junior in front of everyone during the battle to bury the hatchet. Junior may consider forgiving him, and can also consider asking the sect to take back the kill warrant." At this point, Duan Muqing glanced at Xiao Hua and said, "Besides, if a man of indomitable spirit does not even dare to accept such a small challenge, what right does he have to call himself a man? What right does he have to cultivate the powerful lightning energy?" Xiao Hua laughed involuntarily when he heard Duan Muqing's provocation. He really did not know how to answer. How could he, a human Mahayana realm cultivator, be so calculative with this guy? Even if he only revealed the strength of a peak 4th grade Yuan Qi, it was not possible to bet with him, right? Seeing that Xiao Hua did not speak, Duan Muqing naturally thought that Xiao Hua was timid. She added fuel to the fire and said, "How about this, Xiao Hua? If you do not wish to participate, you only need to apologize to me here, and I will forgive you." "Humph, Duan Muqing." Gongshu Exian snorted before Xiao Hua could say anything. "If you are so capable, why don't you fight Xiao Hua one-on-one during the battle to bury the hatchet? Don't think I can't see your sinister intentions. You just want to borrow the Duanmu clan's blade to kill Xiao Hua. Oh? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Xian, could it be that during the battle to bury the hatchet, it doesn't have to be two disciples who have personal grudges? Of course. Gongshu Xian was a little angry. Since the various clans are participating, we have to consider their reputation. It doesn't have to be disciples with personal grudges. Don't be fooled. He can't beat you, so he wants someone else to do it. Xiao Hua. Duanmu Qing did not care that Gongshu Xian had exposed her thoughts. She smiled and said, if I were you, I would definitely go up and give it a try. After all, my Duanmu clan's kill order is still in effect. Any Duanmu clan disciple can kill you, and they can even return to the sect to receive a reward. If you are lucky enough to win, the kill order will no longer exist, and you can cultivate in peace in the future. Fine. Xiao Hua looked at Duanmu Qing, who was acting like a clown, and sneered in his heart. Since Xiao Hua didn't have to do it himself, he could just find a Fortune Gate disciple from the Shenhua mainland. Hence, Xiao Hua nodded and said, this Xiao agrees to fight with you. Good. Duanmu Qing's eyes flashed with a cunning look. She smiled and said, looks like you are a man. Come, let's make an oath. Duanmu Qing raised her right hand and looked at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua waved his hand slightly, as if he was shooing away a fly. He said, no need. You are not worthy. Damn it. Duanmu Qing could not help cursing in a low voice. So you are so cunning. If we don't make an oath, who knows if you will participate? Perhaps, you've been planning to slip away for a long time? Duanmu Qing was a little confused, just like Ao Qian from the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. However, one was for power, the other was for love. Oh, or it could be said that behind love, there was also the pursuit of power. Duanmu Qing pressed on, trying to force Xiao Hua into a dead end. However, when Xiao Hua fell into a dead end, he also fell into a dead end in Gongshu Yiming's heart. His various schemes aroused Gongshu Yiming's suspicion of his past actions. Since that is the case, Xiao Hua muttered, turned to look at Mo Jinli and said, Jinli, help me make an oath. I have a new idea. I will change your master. Ah. Mo Jinli was stunned. He did not understand what Xiao Hua meant. However, Mo Jinli was a straightforward man. Since he felt that Xiao Hua's temper was good, he did not care about Xiao Hua's cultivation level. He raised his hand and said, okay, young Master Duanmu, please, you. Seeing that Xiao Hua not only refused to strike his palm to make an oath, but also let a mere scholar disciple take action on his behalf, he was so angry that his face had already turned green. This was really a kind of naked humiliation. You're really going too far. Good. Since you dare to make an oath with me, then remember the fight. Gritting her teeth, Duanmu Qing raised her hand and hit Mo Jinli's palm. She said, in the fight, there is no need to talk about life and death. Humph. Mo Jinli was used to seeing the faces of aristocratic disciples. He said coldly, isn't it just a life? If you have the ability, then come and take it. Chapter 4478. Good. Gongshu Xian at the side clapped, looking at Mo Jinli and praising, as expected, there are great scholars everywhere. I didn't think that not only is Daoist Xiao so heroic, even the cultivators he befriends are more forthright than some of the aristocratic family disciples. Duanmu Qing gritted his teeth and looked at Gongshu Xian, but did not dare to say a word. He turned to Gongshu Yiming and said softly, Miss Yiming, after the battle to bury the hatchet, I will give you an explanation. This matter is definitely not what Xiao Hua said, a female cultivator's view of a person changed in an instant. Now, Gongshu Yiming looked at Duanmu Qing with a faint sense of unfamiliarity. She smiled, actually, it doesn't matter, the words, "doesn't matter," was more painful than a sword stabbing into Duan Wuqing's heart. He forced a smile and looked at Xiao Hua. "Daoist Xiao, I will see you at the battle to bury the hatchet." I know." Xiao Hua nodded. "If Duanmu Liangsheng can come, that would be the best." Liangsheng did not come to Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. "I have disappointed Daoist Xiao." Duan Wuqing smiled and nodded at Gongshu Yiming before turning to leave. But Xiao Hua's words almost made him fall. "I know. You have many granduncles, it doesn't matter who comes." Seeing Duan Wuqing leave in a sorry state, Gongshu Exian felt a little disappointed. She looked at Xiao Hua apologetically. "Xiao Hua, I am sorry, I dragged you into this. I didn't expect you to have a grudge with him." "Not bad." Xiao Hua smiled. "You have changed a lot in 200 years. If it was you in the past, you would not have said this." "Che." Gongshu Exian rolled her eyes at Xiao Hua. "You think you are the only one who did not waste your life?" Gongshu Exian could not help but cover her mouth and laugh. Her eyes looked at Gongshu Yiming and Gongshu Jingyi, revealing more coquettishness. Gongshu Jingyi couldn't help but laugh. He knew that Gongshu Exian had always been arrogant. Not to mention the ordinary disciples, even the famous female disciples of the four clans weren't worthy of her attention. And today, Gongshu Exian's attitude towards Xiao Hua was definitely something that Gongshu Jingyi had never seen before. This didn't allow him to not think about it. Gongshu Jingyi looked at Gongshu Yiming's excited expression and Gongshu Exian's shy expression. He smiled slightly and said, "Little friend Xiao, you probably don't know about the battle to bury the hatchet before the various clans entered the Star Moon Palace, right?" Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at Gongshu Jingyi thoughtfully. He then nodded and said, "Immortal friend is right. This Xiao is not a disciple of an aristocratic family, so how could I know the reason for this battle? However, from what Duan Wuqing said, it should be a bet between the aristocratic clans to settle their grudges in Jai Xinglu." Gongshu Jingyi heard that Xiao Hua didn't call him senior and unconsciously frowned. Then, he looked at Xiao Hua's vigilant expression and felt relieved. However, the more Xiao Hua acted like this, the more interested Gongshu Jingyi was. Not to mention Gongshu Exian's admiration for Xiao Hua, just the previous dispute between Duan Wuqing and Xiao Hua because of Gongshu Yiming, and Gongshu Yiming actually watched from the side and didn't say anything to stop it. Gongshu Jingyi knew that Gongshu Yiming might have some inconvenient reason for transmitting voice to him. Since Gongshu Yiming was happy to see the weak Xiao Hua and the powerful Duanmu clan fight, then Gongshu Yiming's meaning was obvious. Gongshu Jingyi wouldn't let go of this opportunity to recruit Xiao Hua into the Gongshu clan. After all, a formation master stronger than Gongshu Exian, even if his cultivation wasn't high, to the Gongshu clan, he was very precious. Therefore, although Gongshu Jingyi was unhappy, he was still very approachable and said, "Little friend is right. However, this bet is a little different from the usual. The reason for this bet is actually very simple. Because the Star Moon Palace is an ancient relic, all the clans of the hidden Immortal continent want to get a share of the profits. And the grudges between the clan's disciples naturally can't be severed, so in order to prevent the grudges of the hidden Immortal continent from being brought to the Star Moon Palace, all the clans discussed to have a bet before entering the Star Moon Palace. Although this bet can't wipe out all the grudges, it can at least make people feel that there is some balance. Maybe they can get along peacefully in the Star Moon Palace and not cause trouble for everyone." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Fellow Immortal already said that grudges can't be severed. How could it be resolved with a bet to bury the hatchet?" Of course this is the original intention." Gongshu Jingyi smiled and said, "After a few times, all the clans also felt that this was inappropriate, but the night is long and there is no mood to sleep. Instead of waiting for the Star Moon Palace to open in Star Picking Tower, why not find some fun to bet? So it's like this." Xiao Hua nodded. "In that case, it makes sense." But when Gongshu Jingyi heard this, he immediately stopped smiling and said word by word, "This bet to wipe out all the grudges is real. Every disciple of the clans will not be merciful. Even the elders of the clans will form a group of judges to judge every bet. So, little friend Xiao, you can't let your guard down." "Granduncle." Gongshu Exian hurriedly asked, "Xiaohua dealing with that Duanmu Qing is of course no problem, but the Duanmu clan has a lot of experts. Any disciple of the 6th level of essence power will not be easy for Xiaohua to resist." Gongshu Jingyi glanced at Xiaohua and said, "According to what I know, the leader of the Duanmu clan is Duanmu Lianheng. He is famous for his bad temper. That year in Longevity Town, all the clans were watching and no one made a move. When Duanmu Lianheng arrived, he punched Buddha Sek Ci Mei until her expression changed and ordered the Longevity Town's Buddha to retreat. When Duanmu Lianheng retreated, he was blocked by Manjushri Bodhisattva who had just attained nirvana. However, seeing Duanmu Lianheng in this state, Dongfang Jiang Liang of the Dongfang family blocked Manjushri Bodhisattva with his sword. From this, it can be seen that if little friend Xiao wants to bet with the Duanmu clan, I'm afraid." Gongshu Jingyi stopped. Gongshu Yiming smiled and said, "Granduncle, with you here, with my Gongshu clan here, how can Daoist Xiao be at a disadvantage?" Gongshu Jingyi smiled and said, "I'm naturally not afraid of Duanmu Lianheng, but I don't have a good reason." "Granduncle, you're wrong again." Gongshu Yiming hurriedly said, "Daoist Xiao is proficient in formations and thunder techniques. This junior in Exian can't compare to him. If this kind of person is used by my Gongshu clan, wouldn't Granduncle have a good reason?" "This depends on little friend Xiao's opinion." Gongshu Jingyi looked at Xiaohua meaningfully and said, "Maybe he'll be a guest, or have some marriage. Little friend Xiao's strength may not be enough to be a guest, but in terms of marriage, it's possible." Hearing about marriage, Gongshu Yiming slightly raised his elbow and touched Gongshu Exian. Gongshu Exian was stunned and suddenly blushed. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, "Granduncle, this. I'm afraid this won't work. I'm not familiar with Xiaohua." Exian, Granduncle didn't seem to be talking about you." Gongshu Yiming smiled and said, "Why are you so anxious?" I. Gongshu Exian, who was always proud and arrogant, stuttered, not knowing how to answer. She really respected Xiaohua, but to talk about love, it seemed too early to talk about it. "Actually, you don't have to take it seriously. You and Daoist Xiao first, put on a show, give Granduncle an excuse, and deceive the Duanmu clan." Gongshu Yiming suggested, "After this, who will know about this?" But what if the fake becomes real?" Gongshu Exian was a bit sad, looking pitifully at Xiaohua and said, "Xiaohua, if I agree, you won't pester me like that Duanmu Qing, right?" Looking at Gongshu Exian, who had a high cultivation in formations, but was ignorant of the ways of the world, and even spoke like a sinner, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Many thanks. I won't make things difficult for you." "Not at all, not at all." Gongshu Yiming smiled and said, "Little sister Exian often talks about Daoist Xiao in front of me. She really respects you, but she doesn't understand, and doesn't understand what this means? How come I don't know?" Gongshu Exian looked at Gongshu Yiming with shame and anger. "I just feel that Xiaohua is powerful, I don't feel anything else." That day Gusu Qiu Di also said the same. There were many Gongshu clan disciples in the pavilion. At this time, a few girls wanted to come over. But when they heard Gongshu Exian mention Gusu Qiu Di, they looked at each other and sat back, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Gongshu Yiming and Gongshu Exian were very close. She didn't care about Gongshu Exian's shame and anger, and said, "No matter what you think, if Xiaohua has nothing to do with you, Granduncle can't fall out with the Duanmu clan. What do you say? Then he has something to do with him." Gongshu Exian looked at Xiaohua, her face red, and said in a low voice, "Good. Gongshu Jingyi smiled and said, since Exian also agreed, I'll take over Xiao Hua's matter, cough cough. Xiao Hua touched his nose, coughed bitterly and said with a smile, I appreciate everyone's good intentions. A mere Duanmu Lianheng isn't worth me retreating. Gongshu Jingyi frowned and said, little friend Xiao, now is not the time to act on impulse. A real man should know when to yield and when not to. Gongshu Exian also forced a smile and said, Xiao Hua, I know I don't understand things, and always cause trouble. Today's matter originally had nothing to do with you, but I dragged you in, so, you don't need to consider me, first pass this test. Chapter 44-79. Good. Xiao Hua heard Gongshu Exian's words and clapped. I was hesitant before. To be honest, Exian, your formation skills are not bad, but you are too arrogant. You never put others in your eyes. You don't know what's important. You may not be strong in the future. Today, because of your words and your willingness to acknowledge your mistakes, I have decided to ask someone to take you in as a disciple and impart to you the Tao of array formations. Then Xiao Hua looked at Gongshu Yiming and said, and you, Lady Yiming, your 5 Qi Thunder cultivation is not bad. However, the cultivation method is not authentic. It even shows signs of deviating from the essence of a lightning cultivator. This has something to do with your character. You can also consider it. If you have any ideas, you can come find me with Exian after we reach Star Moon Palace. Xiao Hua, what are you talking about? Not to mention Gongshu Yiming, even Gongshu Exian was shocked. She looked at Xiao Hua and asked. Immortal friend Gongshu, thank you for your good intentions. Xiao Hua did not answer. He cupped his hands towards Gongshu Jingyi and turned to leave Gongshu family's pavilion. Mo Jianli also hurriedly cupped his hands and followed. Xiao Hua. Gongshu Exian did not seem to understand Xiao Hua's words. She wanted to chase, but she still said, if you don't want to do this, I will talk to granduncle. How about asking him to find star-picking Lu? Stop. Gongshu Jingyi glared at Gongshu Exian and scolded. Granduncle. Gongshu Exian felt wronged. How can you let Duanmu family bully people like this? Granduncle. A Gongshu family disciple who was originally sitting at the side stood up and looked at Gongshu Jingyi and said softly, this Xiao Hua seems not simple. Confucian families really attached great importance to etiquette. When Xiao Hua and the others came over, because Gongshu Jingyi didn't speak, the disciples of the Gongshu family didn't say a word. At this time, when Xiao Hua, an outsider, left, they all opened their mouths. A tall man nodded and said, that's right. If we did not see him expose Duanmu Qing's tricks, just hearing his last words, we would think he was a noble person. But since he was so calculative with Duanmu Qing, how can he be a noble person? He must have something to rely on. The question is, what does he have to rely on? Someone spoke again. Exian, the silk handkerchief that Xiao Hua gave you, what is it? Gongshu Jingyi thought of something and hurriedly asked. 5 brocade cloud painting array. Since they were all disciples of the Gongshu family, Gongshu Exian had nothing to hide. Hiss. Gongshu Jingyi gasped and exclaimed, the Sun family of the Immortal Palace? Could it be that his backer is the Immortal Palace? If that's the case, no wonder he doesn't put my Gongshu family in his eyes. A disciple of the Gongshu family said self-righteously. That's right. The other female cultivator nodded sourly. Didn't he say it already? We need to find a master for Exian and Yiming. If it's not an immortal official from the Immortal Palace, who can be their master? There's no need for further discussion. Gongshu Jingyi's face turns cold, no matter what this Xiao Hua's background is, and what backing he has. As long as he doesn't have any conflict with my Gongshu family, it's fine. And, the matter of the 5 brocade cloud painting, no one can leak it. Yes, we understand. The disciples of the Gongshu family all replied in a low voice. Also, Qingping, go to Zhai Xinglu and see if they have any news about Xiaohua. Buy it at all costs. Gongshu Jingyi instructed another woman. Yes, disciple will go now. Gongshu Qingping replied and hurriedly left. After finishing the arrangements, Gongshu Jingyi looked at Gongshu Minghu and said, Minghu, come here. Let me ask you, how many cultivators did Zhai Xinglu select to enter the Star Moon Palace? Zhai Xinglu. Did something happen? Gongshu Minghu hurriedly went forward to answer. Not mentioning Xiaohua, he brought Mo Jinli out of the pavilion, looked at the direction, and walked down another flight of stairs. Senior. Mo Jinli followed for a moment, looked left and right, and said in a low voice, Junior doesn't know what you're thinking. However, Junior sees that the Gongshu family doesn't have any evil intentions, and the Duanmu family is really powerful. If Senior doesn't use the Gongshu family, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with that Duanmu Qing. Oh, don't worry about that. Xiaohua smiled and said, I don't put that Duanmu Lianheng in my eyes. How can I not see through Duanmu Qing's provocation? If it wasn't for the Duanmu family's kill order, I wouldn't even care about him. Mo Jinli obviously didn't believe Xiaohua's words, but he could only nod and say, Senior, as long as you're confident. Oh right. Looking at Mo Jinli, Xiaohua said again, previously, I wanted to let my disciple take you in as a disciple, but then I thought of a good friend of mine who is also a Confucian cultivator. He's more powerful than my disciple, so why don't I let him teach you the real Confucian cultivation method? I didn't explain it to you at the Gongshu family. Alright. Thank you Senior for your kind intentions. Mo Jinli hurriedly replied. Previously, Xiaohua had a premonition that he couldn't take in too many disciples, but when he saw Gongshu Xian and Gongshu Ming's aptitudes, he was moved to take them in. As he pondered, he thought of Wen Chu, the Thunderbolt Immortal, and the other clones. Although he could only take in 7 disciples, he had several clones. If nothing unexpected happened, each of his clones should be able to take in 7 disciples. Wen Chu could teach Gongshu Ming the 5 Qi Thunder, the Thunderbolt Immortal could teach Gongshu Xian the Tao of Array, then Wen Chu could also teach Mo Jinli the 5 Qi Origin. But seeing Mo Jinli's absent-minded appearance, Xiaohua naturally understood what he was thinking. He smiled and was about to say something, when a faint clear light swept over. Then, when this clear light touched Xiaohua and the others, it immediately dissipated. It was very strange. If Xiaohua wasn't a Mahayana realm cultivator, he wouldn't have noticed anything. Strange. Xiaohua was stunned. His eyes turned and he was puzzled, who's following me? Could it be the Duanmu family? Could it be that they can't even wait for a challenge to bury the hatchet? Thinking about this, Xiaohua quietly released a strand of Buddhist consciousness. Buddhist consciousness was naturally more concealed than the light of clear sight, not to mention that Xiaohua's avatar had already attained the Buddhist consciousness of Namo Maitreya Buddha. However, just as Xiaohua released his Buddhist consciousness, he saw a faintly discernible shadow floating behind him, quietly approaching. Damn it. Xiaohua frowned. He was really angry. His body moved slightly, blocking in front of Mo Jinli. He raised his left hand, condensed spiritual power in his hand, and calmly made a move. But at this time, to Xiaohua's surprise, the shadow left Xiaohua and Mo Jinli and flew to the other side of the corridor. The corridor of Zhai Xinglu was very large, more than 100 feet long. Xiaohua and Mo Jinli were on the left side. And the shadow was flying to the right side, more than 100 feet away from Xiaohua. It didn't have the intention to attack at all. Xiaohua also unconsciously condensed spiritual power in his hand, quietly waiting for the result. He didn't believe that in the 3 continents, within 100 feet, there was anyone who had a greater advantage than him. Just as Xiaohua saw this and didn't release his spiritual power, What made Xiaohua even more surprised was that the shadow only hesitated for a moment, then immediately flew over. Of course, after flying over, it stopped, and the shadow became even dimmer, as if it was observing something. Senior. With Mo Jinli's abhijna, he naturally couldn't detect the appearance of this shadow. He was a little confused as to why Xiaohua suddenly blocked in front of him, and said curiously, "Senior, I suddenly thought of something." Xiaohua smiled slightly, and said without turning his head, "Come with me." As he spoke, Xiaohua lifted his feet and walked towards the stairs. "Yes." Mo Jinli didn't suspect anything, nodded, and followed. Xiaohua and Mo Jinli left, and the shadow also hurriedly left. However, after a while, Xiaohua's figure appeared in the corridor again. He looked at the place where the shadow disappeared, stroked his chin, and thought, Zhaixing Lu doesn't restrict flying, but most cultivators will not fly unless there's something urgent to show their respect for Zhaixing Lu. Not to mention that this cultivator is so stealthy. At this moment, the disciples of Zhaixing Lu seem to have something urgent to do, and they aren't at their shifts. Could it be that this cultivator did something unfavorable to Zhaixing Lu? However, after a while, Xiaohua denied this. After all, Zhaixing Lu belonged to Xingyu, and Xingyu was founded by Fairy Xingyu. Although Fairy Xingyu didn't reveal herself, she was still an immortal from the immortal realm, and her abhijna was self-evident. Who would dare to pluck the hair from a tiger's body? Since he had come to this conclusion, Xiaohua naturally turned around, wanting to turn back. However, at this moment, another ray of clear light swept over. Just like before, it stopped when it saw Xiaohua, then retracted. Of course, Xiaohua was prepared this time. As if he didn't notice anything, he turned around and walked towards the stairs. Behind him, another shadow vaguely flew by, heading towards the corridor. Hee hee. When the shadow disappeared, Xiaohua smiled and thought to himself, shadows appear again and again. I'm afraid there's a problem. Even if this shadow has nothing to do with Zhaixing Lu, I still have to go take a look. Otherwise, wouldn't my understanding of the hand of karma be in vain? Thinking of this, Xiaohua leaped up and headed towards the end of the corridor. There was also a flight of stairs at the end of the corridor, but the stairs led upwards. At the same time, there was a bow that was shaped like a crescent moon. Xiaohua flew in front of the bow and scanned it with his divine perception. He had already sensed the aura of a defensive array on the bow. He pondered for a moment, and a light flashed around him. The appearance of a small nose and small eyes appeared, and he rushed towards the bow. Chapter 4480. Swoosh. A dual-colored cloud descended and shrouded Xiaohua's figure. Xiaohua's concealing technique was also revealed. Moreover, under the cloud, the jade pendant in Xiaohua's bosom shone with a strange brilliance. When this brilliance touched the cloud, it immediately left Xiaohua. Naturally, the cloud also disappeared. Looking again in front of Xiaohua, there was a small hall. Several Confucian cultivators at the 6th level of essence power were holding their respective imperial artifacts, standing there on guard, eyeing Xiaohua like a tiger eyeing its prey. Among them, a general with an average stature and bulging muscles all over his body whispered, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" "Me?" Xiaohua was taken aback. He didn't know how to answer. Moreover, he knew very well that this was a secret signal. How could he answer without a secret signal? However, looking at the Confucian cultivator at 6th grade origin Qi, Xiaohua sneered and replied, "This one is a good friend of the Star Moon Palace Master. I was just wandering around when I had nothing to do." Xiaohua originally wanted to say that he found this place a little strange, so he came over to take a look. However, before he could speak, the general spoke coldly. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in his voice as he said, "Why are you dawdling like this? Why aren't you coming over?" "Oh." Xiaohua was taken aback. He really didn't expect this sentence to be the so-called secret signal. These Confucian cultivators really keep up with the times. Of course, since the secret signal had been matched, he didn't say anything else. Bai Qingyu's experience had already told him that if he wanted to pretend, he had to pretend until the end. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see the truth if he gave up halfway. Although Bai Qingyu, heaven-concealing ridge, and ancient Bell Mountain already belonged to the Fortune Gate, he still didn't know who was the real mastermind behind the scenes. Even the 3 great sages of the Great Sage Hall didn't know. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't say anything and walked into the hall. This hall was similar to the one Xiaohua had seen before. There was nothing special about it. However, there were many more Gongshu family disciples inside the hall. Moreover, everyone was sitting with their heads down and didn't talk to others. When Xiaohua walked in, no one raised their heads to look at him. Therefore, Xiaohua looked around and found a place where there weren't many people and casually sat down. He also slightly lowered his head and only released his Buddhist sense to look at the situation around him. What surprised Xiaohua was that the cultivators in this hall were all Confucian cultivators, and they were all above the great grandmaster realm. Many of the cultivators were even wearing things that concealed their cultivation base. Xiaohua's cultivation base was extraordinary, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to see through it. Hee, this is getting more and more interesting. Seeing the situation before his eyes, how could Xiaohua not know that he was already in a very delicate situation? Moreover, he had coincidentally uncovered a mysterious veil. He was looking forward to seeing what was behind the veil. Unfortunately, Xiaohua was still overthinking things. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the military generals who had been guarding the door earlier walked in, looked around, and said, "Today's gathering was rushed, so not many people came. Let's not talk about anything else. I just want to tell everyone that the previous plan will be put on hold for now. If there is no new information, everyone should not take any action for now. Just enter the Star Moon Palace and do your own things. I have a question." Without waiting for the military general to finish speaking, a cultivator called out coldly, "Fellow Immortal, please speak." The military general raised his hand and pointed. "I believe that all of you are like me, fellow immortals, and have put in a lot of effort for today. We naturally entered the Star Moon Palace for one purpose, but, towards the star-picking tower." "Shut up." Without waiting for the cultivator to finish speaking, the military general roared angrily. A tricolored ball of light condensed in his hand, and he shouted, "Don't tell me you don't know the taboo?" Yes, I know I was wrong." The cultivator hurriedly apologized and said, "I just wanted to say that we have been preparing for a long time, and now that we have a clue, why did we suddenly give up?" This. The military general was obviously stunned. He didn't expect someone to ask. He then turned to look at another cultivator. That cultivator pondered for a moment before saying, "Actually, this is also a secret that you don't need to know. However, considering that all of you have made a lot of preparations, we may have a chance in the future. Thus, Master told me to tell you that the current situation is a little different. This is because the Star Moon Palace Lord has appeared today and brought back 2 cultivators of unknown origins. Furthermore, one of them is a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator. This is not something that we can deal with. Thus, our plan will be postponed." A human Grand Ascension stage cultivator? How is that possible? The military general exclaimed, "I've never heard of a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator in the Tao sect. I don't care if you believe it or not, but I do." The cultivator said in an indifferent voice, "This is what Master told us to do. You can all disperse." Disperse? The military general faltered upon hearing this. "We're going to disperse just like that?" "That's right, what else can we do? Do you want a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator to kill you with a single slap?" The cultivator chuckled. "Hurry up and leave. Even today's gathering was decided after much deliberation by Master. He wants to minimize your losses. The Star Moon Palace's Palace Lord is only a 7th grade origin Qi cultivator. How can we not be a match for her? The military general exclaimed, "That human Grand Ascension stage cultivator. Perhaps he's just passing by, shut up." The cultivator roared, "Master will think about this matter. It's not up to you to speak. Hurry up and leave. If the Star Moon Palace finds out about this, we'll all be dead." "Humph, if you knew something was wrong, you should have stayed outside Star Plucking Tower," one of the cultivators muttered. "Cut the crap, hurry up and disperse," another cultivator scolded in a low voice. "Do you know what it means by, what's real is fake, and what's fake is real?" "I know what it means by, the most dangerous place is the safest place," the cultivator muttered in a low voice before getting up and walking toward a curved outline of a small door not far away. Seeing that the cultivator had left, no one said anything else. They all got up and slowly made their way toward the small door. Although Xiaohua hadn't been here for a long time, from these few short sentences, Xiaohua learned a lot. As he watched everyone leave, he looked at the cultivators standing next to him and muttered in his heart. If he were to make a move now, he would definitely be able to capture these cultivators and perhaps find out the truth. However, when he thought of Fairy Xing Yu's stingy attitude, Xiaohua curled his lips slightly. Damn it, they seem to be after Star Moon or Star Plucking Tower. Moreover, it's easy to tell that the Tower Master of Star Plucking Tower is among them. Why am I getting involved? Fairy Xing Yu has already made it clear that she doesn't intend to leave Star Moon to me in the future. Why should I meddle in other people's business? I just need to do a good job for the Merchant Alliance. If an immortal from the immortal world can make Star Moon into something like this, why can't I, a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator, do the same? While Xiaohua was thinking, many cultivators had already left. Xiaohua looked again and saw that several cultivators were already looking at him. He shrugged, blinked his eyes with Zhang Xiaohua's appearance, turned around, and followed the crowd through the small door. Outside the small door was another corridor. Xiaohua didn't see any other cultivators nearby. He was certain that this small door must be a defensive array of Star Plucking Tower. If it weren't for Star Plucking Tower spies, they wouldn't have been able to obtain such convenience. However, what did this have to do with Xiaohua? Xiaohua smiled, as if he had just watched a farce. He recovered his appearance and casually walked in a certain direction. The floors of Star Plucking Tower were the same as those seen outside. After passing through this small door, Xiaohua couldn't tell which floor he was on. However, he knew that Su Ji and Fairy Xing Yu must be on the highest floor, so he walked up the stairs when he saw them. After walking through 2 pavilions, before Xiaohua could figure out which floor he was on, he heard a slightly oppressive voice above his head say, "There's no need to talk about this anymore. I've already made up my mind. If Murong Hui has any objections, feel free to look for me after we reach Star Moon Palace." Sweat. When Xiaohua heard this familiar voice, he immediately stood on the stairs and refused to move. Damn it, is this really the rhythm of my ascension? It's just Star Moon Palace, but acquaintances are appearing one after another. If it's not to settle the karma, why would they all appear here? Xiaohua stood there and waited quietly. Sure enough, after a few breaths, a graceful figure appeared in front of him. Wasn't it Murong Songyun? Murong Songyun was as graceful as before, but there was a trace of coldness between her beautiful eyebrows. Behind her, there were a few men and women who were around the 5th level of origin energy. Although their cultivation was similar to Murong Songyun's, they all lowered their heads and listened to Murong Songyun's reprimand. When Murong Songyun raised her head, she saw Xiaohua standing there with a faint smile on his face. At first, she was stunned, then her beautiful eyes instantly clouded over. Her body stiffened as she stared at Xiaohua, unable to say a single word. Immortal friend Murong. When Xiaohua saw Murong Songyun's reaction, his heart trembled. He smiled and asked, "We haven't seen each other for many years. How are you?" You. Murong Songyun stared at Xiaohua and breathed with all her might. Her already towering chest heaved up and down. After a moment, she took a deep breath. Rather than saying that she couldn't breathe properly, it would be better to say that she was inhaling the moisture in her eyes. Her mouth slightly stuttered as she asked, "You? Are you really still alive?" "Hee, of course." Xiao Hua sighed and nodded. "Even if the Chu family dies, this Xiao won't die." "Chu family." Murong Songyun smiled. That smile was like 100 flowers blooming. "I would rather the Chu family die. I don't want." Murong Songyun looked around and said with a stunned expression, "Go and wait. Do as I say." "Yes, this subordinate understands." The few Confucian cultivators looked at Xiao Hua in astonishment. They lowered their heads and quickened their pace. They rushed past Xiao Hua and walked down the stairs. Chapter 4481. Murong Songyun walked in front of Xiao Hua in a few steps, but the closer she got, the smaller her steps, as if she didn't dare to close the distance between them. Her eyes almost never left Xiao Hua's face. When she got closer, she said, "Xiao Hua, you really scared me to death. What happened that day? In order to save me, you fell from the sword diagram. I also wanted to rush down, but I was entangled by that damn bald donkey. I thought, since you died, I also didn't want to live alone. I wanted to die together with that damn bald donkey." At this time, 14th uncle finally arrived and solved my dangerous situation. But when I went to look for you again, there was no trace of you. Speaking to here, Murong Songyun stopped. His eyes flashed with extraordinary splendor, and his tone carried joy as he said, "I originally thought you had already fallen in the demon god's blood, but who would have thought, before I could even return to the clan, I would receive the abnormality of the demon god's blood." I really don't know how to describe the surprise at that time. "Xiao Hua, you are truly a person who is good at creating miracles. I didn't dare to believe that you could actually survive in the god-devil blood pool, and I didn't dare to believe that you were actually farming there after the god-devil blood pool disappeared. Did you know? In these 200 years, I have been to the god-devil blood pool several times and personally saw the drastic changes there. Oh, no, that place is no longer called the god-devil blood pool, but Xiao country. A country that is not a country of Confucian cultivators, nor a country of Taoism. A country that is named after a Taoist cultivator that they worship. A country that is bigger than all the countries in the hidden immortal continent. This country doesn't have a ruler, nor does it have any authority. Because other than the Taoist cultivator that is like a god in their hearts, there is no one else in the entire hidden immortal continent that can be the ruler of this country." Xiao Hua touched his nose and bitterly smiled. "Miss Murong, there is no need to be so emotional. This Xiao only sowed some rice seeds there. Moreover, there is also the contribution of the literary saints of the various clans. This Xiao's actions are really insignificant. This might be insignificant in your eyes, and even in the eyes of other cultivators. It is merely a senseless act. But in the eyes of the hundreds of millions of citizens of Xiao Kingdom, what you have done is a miracle." Murong Songyun smiled and said, "You can imagine that the entire 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent is a disaster. Thousands of li around the Xiao Empire is filled with rice fields. Every citizen who can settle down in the Xiao Empire has no worries about food or clothing. This Xiao Empire is the immortal world in the eyes of all mortals. I have been to Xiao Empire several times in the past few hundred years and witnessed the prosperity of Xiao Empire with my own eyes. Today, Xiao Empire has already become a rare paradise in the entire hidden immortal continent." Hearing Murong Songyun's words, Xiao Hua also smiled. Back then, he thought that if he didn't plant grain in such a large swamp, it would become a real swamp in the future. Leaving it there would be a waste. That was why he let the disciples farm with him. But he didn't expect that this matter would cause such a huge commotion under the influence of the literary saints of the various aristocratic families. It truly had a kind of unparalleled spirit of securing millions of acres of fertile land and protecting the hungry people of the world. Don't do small deeds without doing them. This saying is indeed correct. Xiaohua nodded. This small kindness can sometimes become great kindness. At that time, this Xiao had never thought that there would be such a huge commotion. Oh, Miss Murong, that day, this Xiao was knocked unconscious by the heavenly king of the Buddhist sect into the demonic god blood swamp. When I woke up, not only was the demonic god blood swamp gone, there was only a large swamp. Even the disciples of the Chu family, Miss Murong, and the others were gone. This Xiao also doesn't know what happened in the demonic god blood swamp. If possible, can Miss Murong tell this Xiao what happened that day? Oh. Murong Songyun was slightly taken aback and said curiously, "Your words are a bit strange. These things were taboo back then, and no one would say a word about it. But since the sutra seeking extreme bliss is about to end, the filth between us Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect has long disappeared. The truth of the demonic god blood swamp has spread quite a bit in the hidden immortal continent. Could it be that you don't know?" Xiaohua said with a smile, "It's precisely because there are too many rumors that this Xiao has no way to judge. That's why I want to hear from you." Hee hee. Murong Songyun said with a smile, "If you call me Jin Xiao and don't call me Miss Murong, I will tell you. Otherwise, don't even think about it." "All right." Xiaohua's heart slightly swayed as he said, "Isn't it just Jin Xiao? Even if I have to call you Jin Xiao 1,000,000 times, I am willing." Murong Songyun's face slightly reddened. She bit her lips and said softly, "This is what you said. From now on, call me Jin Xiao once a day." As she spoke, Murong Songyun looked down the stairs and said softly, "This time, I followed 7th granduncle to Zhai Xinglu because I wanted to take a look at the Star Moon Palace. Come with me to see 7th granduncle. He appreciates you. Along the way, I will tell you everything that happened in the divine devil blood pool." This. Xiaohua hesitated for a moment, but after a moment, he felt relieved. After all, he had already come to Zhai Xinglu, so he would definitely meet Murong Jiang. Previously, he had hoped to obtain the protection of the Murong family and Murong Jiang had also agreed. Today, he would be able to understand everything. Seeing Xiaohua hesitate, Murong Songyun's eyes flashed with apprehension. When Xiaohua spoke, he said, "All right, bring me there. I also want to see him." Hee hee. Murong Songyun's face glowed. He seemed to be very happy and almost jumped up. He said, "Let's go. 7th granduncle will definitely be very happy to see you." Immediately, Murong Songyun brought Xiaohua down the stairs. As they walked, he told Xiaohua what happened after he fell into the divine devil blood pool. Actually, after Xiaohua fell into the divine devil blood pool, the Chu family's patriarch and elders took action. Murong Songyun didn't hold on for too long and left the sword diagram. Most of what Murong Songyun said was from the sage of literature, Murong Jun. Not sure if it was because Murong Songyun didn't know that Murong Jun obtained information about the divine devil puppet or because he didn't want to tell Xiaohua, but Murong Songyun only said that when the sage of literature took action and killed the heavenly king of Buddhism, the divine devil blood pool suddenly changed and stopped. At this time, Murong Songyun brought Xiaohua to the front of a pavilion. Xiaohua naturally didn't ask. He slightly nodded and sighed, "I didn't expect that after I fainted, so many things would happen. If the sage of literature didn't come, you and the Chu family's disciples would have fallen in the divine devil blood pool." Murong Songyun shook his head and said, "Xiaohua, you are wrong. In fact, all of this had been arranged in advance. I and the other disciples also knew about it. We also knew that we were bait. But we didn't expect the Buddhist sect's methods to be so ruthless. They actually used some soul cultivators' transportation channel. So, you have to remember, on the hidden immortal continent, the power of the various families is the real big hand behind the scenes. Even the high and mighty immortal palace isn't." "Yes." Xiaohua sighed, "Otherwise, why would I want to shelter under the Murong family's power and avoid the immortal palace's attack?" Hee hee. Murong Songyun laughed again. He reached out and pulled Xiao Hua's sleeve. You have already done what you promised, seventh uncle. I presume he has nothing else to say, right? Xiao Hua opened his mouth. He wanted to explain something, but seeing Murong Tsongyun's smiling face, he swallowed his words. The Murong family's pavilion was similar to the Gongshu family's, but there weren't many people in the pavilion. Aside from a few men and women with similar cultivation to Murong Tsongyun standing around the pavilion, there was a very proud young man sitting on a chair. He was holding a yellow book and carefully reading it. This young man was Murong Jiang, whom Xiao Hua met at the God-Demon Blood Pool. Before the Fiend God Blood Pool, Xiao Hua was unable to see through Murong Jiang's strength. 200 years later, Xiao Hua was able to clearly see through Murong Jiang's strength. This Murong Jiang was already a martial ancestor at the peak of the 7th level of origin energy, only one step away from stepping into the realm of literary saint. Presumably, Murong Jiang was the person the Murong family wanted to enter Star Moon Palace, right? Murong Jiang didn't even raise his head as he pulled Xiao Hua into the pavilion. His eyes were fixed on the book, unable to move. Seventh uncle, seventh uncle. Murong Tsongyun excitedly called out, look who's here. N. Murong Jiang responded, but his right index finger was on his lips again. He dipped it in his saliva and flipped through the book, reading it with relish. Quick. Murong Tsongyun pulled Xiao Hua and secretly said, quick, pay your respects to seventh uncle. He will definitely keep his promise. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. He slightly raised his hand and was just about to open his mouth when he saw Murong Jiang waving his hand and blocking his way. Murong Jiang lightly said, Yun, what promise did granduncle give you? As he spoke, the corners of Murong Jiang's eyes twitched. He glanced at Murong Tsongyun and Xiao Hua, and then his gaze fell onto the book. However, just as his gaze touched the book, his entire body suddenly went still, as if he had thought of something. He raised his head, and his gaze fell onto Xiao Hua like lightning. With a voice of disbelief, he said, Xiao Hua. How come it's you? Yes, it's me. Xiao Hua smiled and said, we haven't seen each other for 200 years. Immortal friend Murong is still as elegant as before. Immortal friend Murong? Murong Tsongyun's face slightly changed when he heard Xiao Hua's address. He hurriedly pulled Xiao Hua's arm, hinting him to change the way he addressed him. Murong Jiang looked at Xiao Hua and seemed to understand something. He smiled and said, Xiao Hua, this old man really didn't expect you to be able to come back alive from the divine devil blood swamp. Presumably, when Yun sees you, she will mention the matter this old man promised you. This old man understands Yun-er's thoughts. She has mentioned this matter many times in the past 200 years, but you have never come to my Murong family. Since we met in the Thousand Devils Sacred Realm Star-Picking Tower, this old man will be frank with you. This old man is a man of his word. If you are willing to be my Murong family's guest elder, this old man will immediately agree. Moreover, I will immediately report this matter to the family through Star-Picking Tower. When we come out of Star Moon Palace and return to the family, we will officially let you join my Murong family. Chapter 4482. Speaking up to here, Murong Jiang looked at Murong Tsongyun, who had lowered her head in silence, and lovingly said, this way, one of Yun-er's worries will be resolved. Seventh uncle. Murong Tsongyun's head lowered even more. Even her neck seemed a bit red. Her voice was as low as a mosquito's flapping wings as she said, Senior, why are you talking so much today? This old man is very happy today. Murong Jiang laughed, then pointed at Xiao Hua and said, that day at the demonic god's blood pool, this old man was optimistic about Xiao Hua, so I handed you over to him. Moreover, he didn't disappoint this old man. For you, he was shot down by the Buddhist sex protector. His survival is naturally the will of the heavens, and also my Murong family's fortune. Seeing Xiao Hua again today, this old man is also very happy. As long as he agrees, this old man will immediately hold a banquet to celebrate his success, and also congratulate him in advance for joining my Murong family. Seventh uncle is very considerate. Boy, thank you. Although Murong Songyun was shy, she still used her arm to nudge Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, why aren't you thanking seventh uncle? Hee hee. Xiaohua's eyes slightly turned, and a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He replied, fellow Daoist Murong still remembers the promise from 200 years ago. This Xiao is very gratified. This Xiao came here today precisely for this matter. Although this Xiao doesn't plan to be under the protection of any family, this Xiao still wants to thank fellow Daoist for giving this Xiao that opportunity. When Murong Songyun heard this, the redness on her face immediately disappeared, and was replaced by a deathly pale face. Her eyes were filled with panic, like the petals on a branch falling down. Although Xiaohua had seen through a lot, he still didn't dare to look straight into her eyes. Murong Songyun seemed to be crying blood as she asked in a low voice, Darling Xiao, is it because this concubine didn't do well? Is it because this concubine hasn't been looking for you these days? You should know that I already told you everything on the sword diagram in the God-Devil blood pool. I have some difficulties that I can't tell you about. I've already sacrificed a lot for a few opportunities. After I returned from the God-Devil blood pool, I completed the mission given to me by the clan. Only then did I get what I wanted. Over the years, I've been working hard to do things for the clan. Although I've been thinking about you, I've also been planning for the future, alas. Xiaohua gave a slight sigh. He had never been ruthless towards female cultivators. Even if there were times when he felt that this female cultivator was deceiving him, he was not willing to say it out loud. Murong Jiang looked at Murong Songyun's appearance, and his face revealed a look of love. He looked at Xiaohua and angrily said, Xiaohua, did you see that? Which woman in my Murong family isn't rare? And Yuner is the most outstanding one among these women. You don't know how much virtue you have accumulated in your previous life to gain her favor. If you dare to make her angry, this old man will definitely not forgive you. Seventh granduncle. Murong Songyun sobbed and said, This may be Xiaohua's misunderstanding. Please don't blame him. Wait until he knows everything that the boy has done. He will definitely forgive the boy. Alas, you still want to wait for the future? Murong Jiang sighed and said, You know. A moment's mistake may be a lifetime's mistake. This old man was also young. How can I let you repeat my mistakes? After saying that, Murong Jiang's imposing aura flourished. The true qi around his body swayed like an awakened lion. He roared and pounced towards Xiaohua. A deafening voice sounded in Xiaohua's ear, Do you know how much Yuner has done for you? If you don't give Yuner an answer today, this old man will definitely not forgive you. Xiaohua slightly shook his head. He looked at Murong Jiang's true qi and didn't do anything. He just said, Why do you have to do this? Since we already have a good impression of each other, there's no need to expose it. Although Xiaohua didn't make a move, his entire body was still standing there like an immovable wisdom king. Not only was his entire body's magical power restrained, there wasn't any flaw. Even his eyes were clear, there wasn't a trace of fear in them. Compared to 200 years ago when he punched Xiaohua into the ground, there was a world of difference. Murong Jiang's heart was greatly alarmed. His Zhen Qi was originally probing and intimidating, but it couldn't help but be mixed with killing intent. He slightly raised his right hand. Just as Murong Jiang's killing intent appeared, Xiaohua's expression slightly changed. His eyes that were like a clear stream began to set off small waves. Seventh granduncle. Just when Murong Jiang was in a bit of a dilemma, Murong Songyun hastily threw himself in front of Xiaohua and blocked Xiaohua behind him. Then, he raised his swan-like neck and resolutely said, You can't blame Xiaohua for this matter, and you can't force him. If he doesn't want to, there will be a knot in his heart. Even if he makes the boy happy for a while, he will never let the boy be happy for a lifetime. You feel that Xiaohua has hurt your face. If you want to hurt him, you can do it. Boy is willing to be Xiao Hua's scapegoat. Murong Jiang narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua. He could tell that Xiao Hua was only at the 5th level of origin energy. He wasn't much different from the Xiao Hua he saw at the blood pool of gods and devils. Murong Jiang was sure that he could kill Xiao Hua in one strike, just like before. However, there was a kind of vigilance in his heart. The Xiao Hua in front of him was very dangerous. If he didn't succeed with this strike, it would bring about consequences that he couldn't bear. Seeing Murong Songyun blocking his right hand and giving him a way out, Murong Jiang sternly said, "All right, Yun, since you have pleaded for leniency, this old man won't make things too difficult for Xiao Hua. Moreover, this old man can give him a period of time to consider. If he still doesn't reply after the Star Moon Palace, then this old man won't let him take a single step into my Murong family." "Yes, thank you, 7th Granduncle." Murong Songyun hurriedly expressed his thanks. With a distressed expression, he turned to Xiao Hua and said, "Xiao Hua, I don't know how to explain it to you. If you want to ask something, as long as it doesn't involve my Murong family's secrets, I can answer. I only ask that you can understand my heart." Forget it." Xiao Hua sighed and shook his head. This Xiao was wrong. The past is the past. If I want to use the past to look at the present, how can it not be a joke? If you still want to see this Xiao in the future, then don't do these meaningless things. This Xiao will take his leave." After saying this, Xiao Hua didn't say anything else and turned around to leave. "Xiao Hua, Xiao Hua." Murong Songyun turned around and chased after him. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure floating out of the pavilion, his face was filled with disappointment and surprise. 7th Granduncle. Murong Songyun stopped and turned to look at Murong Jiang. He whispered, "Do you think? You all go out first, don't let anyone else in." Without waiting for Murong Songyun to finish, Murong Jiang interrupted him and said to the other Murong family disciples in the pavilion. "Yes." Several Murong family disciples answered and hurriedly left. At this time, Murong Jiang asked, "Yun, where did you meet Xiao Hua?" "Just a moment ago, the boy came out of the Zhangsun family." Murong Songyun explained the situation of meeting Xiao Hua and then asked, 7th Granduncle. The boy felt that Xiao Hua seemed to have noticed something. "It's not just noticed something," Murong Jiang coldly said, from his tone. "You still don't know? He's already a bit wary of our Murong family." The boy also didn't think. Murong Songyun said with some regret, the boy did something wrong that made him suspicious. He's a character that the people of Shao country worship as a god. If our Murong family can win him over, it will certainly be of great use to our Murong family's development. "You're too idealistic," Murong Jiang faintly replied. "The so-called Shao country is nothing more than an ideal place for the secular people. In the eyes of cultivators like us, it's just a chicken or a pottery dog, not worth mentioning. If it weren't for the fact that the scholars of several families mentioned Shao country before, all the families would have some scruples about it. I'm afraid that Shao country would have already been invaded by the nearby Confucian country. This Xiao Hua. If he doesn't go to Shao country, not only will the Immortal Palace send a crusade, but the nearby Confucian country will also send troops. He will only die. Shao country will only perish." "Yes." Murong Songyun nodded. The boy also knows this, so he wants to seize the opportunity to take down Shao country. Speaking up to hear, Murong Songyun was suddenly startled, his face somewhat pale, and anxiously said, 7th Granduncle. The boy remembered, wasn't Xiao Hua suppressed by a demon king? How could he suddenly appear here? He must have suspected it because of this matter. The boy had already told 2nd Granduncle when he received the news. Xiao Hua is very strange, he actually didn't die after falling into the demon god's blood pool. There must be something fishy about him. If we can save him from the demon king. How is that possible? Murong Jiang coldly said, "You think only you know the importance of Shao Hua and Shao country. The other families also know about it. But what kind of place is Bai Qingyu? Not to mention that the Demon King already has the strength of an 8th grade origin energy realm. If we want to save Shao Hua, without a few scholars, it's impossible. But if the scholars make a move, it's a big taboo of the Great Sage Hall. Not to mention that Shao Hua can't be saved, even the scholars might not be able to return. Moreover, Bai Qingyu is in the center of the 1,000 demons sacred realm. If we Confucian cultivators want to go in, without an organization like Zhai Xing Lu who is very familiar with the 1,000 demons sacred realm, it's very difficult to not be discovered by the demons. So, for a mere Shao country, which family is willing to take such a big risk? Granduncle, the boy also thought about this at that time. Murong Songyun was still vexed, but the boy bumped into him too hastily. The boy didn't think about how the boy would answer if the Demon King asked why he didn't save him, so the boy simply pretended that he didn't know anything. Perhaps, because of this matter, the Demon King saw something? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.